ставши на коліно, своє полкове знамено, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі, всю кров
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Lviv Spring Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 323 of the news. And today, Russians freeze in the snow.
And today, the Russians aren't freezing in the snow. Call them popsicles because they're icy and ready. But before we get to that news, we have a whole lot of news to cover today that is both very important and game-changing, both for Ukraine and the rest of the Western world. Starting off with our first bit of news in Warsaw, where we heard today that not only are the Polish going to be sending tanks, but the British are as well, in a joint coalition to supply the Ukrainians with Western tanks. There is from what we were able to tell initially, an unknown number of Leopard 2s that the Polish are going to be providing, and the 10 British Challenger 2s that will be sent to Ukraine. These tanks will be game-changing. We went over them in last night's stream, but they outclass any tank currently used in Ukraine by far. Even the Ukrainian tanks, such as the T-84 Oplot, which are fairly modernized versions of the older T-80s that the Russians or the Soviets once used. The Challenger 2s have improved optics. They also have a longer range. They are more accurate. They have better armor protection. It is one of the heaviest battle tanks on the field, but it is also one of the slightly easier ones to repair as far as Western vehicles go. The Leopard 2 not only has high maneuverability going for it, but once again, impressive firepower and great protection as well. The three main elements that you want in a modern main battle tank to make them succeed on the battlefield, and we are seeing all of that in this announcement right here. We are going to be looking forward and also eyeballing, in particular, the delivery of both the Challengers and the Leopard 2s to Ukraine and seeing how they perform in the coming days and weeks. We have nothing but high hopes for these tanks, considering that usually, whenever used in conflicts, they're able to outgun and outclass anything that the Soviets and the Russians have ever made. And, of course, obviously, we've already seen how the Javelin performs in the N-Law, and if we've gotten anything from the Javelin and the N-Laws, it's that they are incredibly good. They can take out a tank on their own, and if a shoulder-fired anti-tank, I guess you could say, weapon is able to knock out any Russian main battle tank there is, imagine how good a Challenger 2 and a Leopard 2 can do. It's going to be unbelievable, to say the least. But moving on from that news and on into Russia, we've also seen some interesting things occurring here today as well. For example, in Moscow, we saw the news network 1420, a great YouTube channel, and once again, I have to give them a plug every time we watch their videos. It is unbiased reporting on the ground. They take the answers they get, and they show them around the world. They do not sugarcoat it. They do not make it into anything it's not. They don't try and paint the Russians to be evil. They don't try and paint the Russians to be angels either. They just show you what they really think, and today, the channel 1420 went around and asked the Russians, do you want to be free? And let's look at the answer to this, because we got a wide...
Wants to say no.
Well, actually, you will see some of those answers. We got a wide variety of answers today, so let me back it up and show you all this video, because it's actually eye-opening on what some Russians really think and what their mindset is. So here's the video. Also, let me turn up the audio.
That's a pretty cool effect on the text, too.
Yeah, it's that drunk Russian effect.
Вот у вас Китай вообще ассоциируется со свободным государством или нет?
Не знаю, просто какая-то ассоциация существует.
Ну, вы знаете, там очень жесткая цензура, говорят.
Да, там есть жесткая цензура, там очень жесткие законы, вот. Но при этом там вроде люди счастливы и, не знаю, кажется, она свободным.
Хочешь ли ты...
Oh, hang on. What type of answer is that? Yes, they have strong censorship and they'll arrest you if you dissent against the government, but at least they feel free. Like, what kind of answer is that? Everyone's fine in the situation they're born and raised in, but that doesn't mean they're free. You know, like, that didn't even make any sense at all. But let's move on to the next one.
Ты, чтобы Россия стала такой же свободной, как Китай?
Ну, смотря что имеется в виду, конечно, под понятием свободы. И свобода в чем? Свобода в выражении, может быть, воли или передвижения?
Ну, в выражении, скажем, своих мыслей, в свободе культуры. Ну, может, ты знаешь, там в Китае, например, очень жесткая цензура.
Ну...
Вопрос глупый. Я считаю, что Россия сейчас на самом деле самая свободная страна из всех, которые есть.
The freest country. We've gotten the answer to win above them all. Russia is the freest country in the world. You can say whatever you want in Russia, do whatever you want, be whoever you want, go wherever you want. The Russians are not going to stop you, but let's see if she actually explains why it's free.
Угу. Почему?
Ну, потому что если у вас есть знакомые в других странах, на самом деле там гораздо меньше свободы слова, гораздо меньше свободы действий. Чувак, ты можешь из любой ситуации здесь на
What is she talking about? People who are anti-war are in prison right now for 10 years, a minimum sentence. And she's saying you can say whatever you want in Russia and generally get away with it. Meanwhile, there are tens of thousands of people rotting away in Russian prisons because you can't. What planet does this woman live on, Matthew?
They should ask her to go ahead and like say something just to test the theory. Say like I hate Russia and see what happens.
Yeah,
she
like,
won't say it.
Like, you know, that would actually be a good one. Say, walk up to a cop and say this and see if it works. No, I wouldn't. Why not? Because you can't say that. Well, then that's not freedom of speech, is it? No. That's how that would go. And I wonder if they're going to ask her that.
Или выйти, ну, как бы, выпутаться, скажем так, посредством различных, ну, там, и та же коррупция зачастую помогает всем, на которую все так ругаются. И, ну, господи, ты можешь все, что угодно в этом городе, на самом деле, пока что.
Знаете, там просто в Северной Корее, в Китае там очень жесткая цензура. В Северной Корее так вообще там просто все контролируется государством. В Китае тоже весьма много что. А вот в связи с этим вопрос. Вот вам бы хотелось, чтобы в России сейчас вернулась, ну или стала такая очень жесткая цензура, когда правительство будет вообще все контролировать?
Да,
Что вы
надо
считаете
все
так?
контролировать, да.
А зачем?
Как зачем? Вот раньше колбаса была настоящая, все было молоко настоящее, а теперь ни фермы нету, чтобы было настоящее молоко. Все это, как это, химия одна.
Ну, а вот контроль в культуре, например, какие темы можно обсуждать, какие нельзя?
И культура тоже. У нас даже при Советском Союзе здесь клуб был. А как и стало все это, перестройка это началась. И клуб разобрали по бревнам, куда его растащили. И все, бедные дети ходят, никакой ни культуры, никаких ни кружков, ничего.
It appears, this is actually very interesting. Her interview is wrapped up right here, actually. It's just the ending of the sentence. We can actually see that for the first time ever, the rural residents of Russia, this woman here is living in Siberia, are actually going against what we've seen the city folks say, the younger city folk. Usually they're the ones who are really anti-government, not really a big fan of what they're doing in the war or what they are as a whole. But now when you ask them this question, is Russia free or not? They go, oh yeah, really, really free. And the rural people, who are usually very supportive of Russia in every regard, are going, no, it's not free. A lot has actually gotten worse. Even since Soviet times, it's gotten way worse. And that's very bizarre. We've never seen this before, ever. If you go back through all of my streams and ever watch a 1420 video we've shown on here, the rural Russians are usually the ones who are super pro-Russian. We've never seen any of them criticize Russia like this.
Вообще забросили.
Как сказать, я вообще не противник цензуры, я скорее ее даже поддерживаю, потому что почти все великие произведения искусства, из тех, которые я знаю, они при достаточно жесткой цензуре проводились. Но, опять же, цензура бывает разная. Условно говоря, например, при Медичи тоже была цензура с той стороны, что они поддерживали только то, что им нравилось. Но...
Hey, I think I have to explain what this Medici means.
Oh.
So check this out. There is a whole article on Wikipedia, and it says that they inspired the Italian Renaissance, and they also did a lot of other things. So it was Italian family, basically.
Но в современном смысле, мне кажется, что Китай — это как раз не самая людоедская страна, и там как раз достаточно большие есть возможности, конечно, в рамках идеологических каких-то требований. Вот. А во-вторых, ну, у Китая очень сильный, как минимум, кинематограф, неплохая литература.
But the thing is, though, it's like this guy is explaining, you know, it's great in China because they have good movies. Does this guy understand that movies don't really equate into free speech at all? Like, there's no real translation to movies and free speech. Hell, even in the United States, movies really aren't an extension of free speech. For a good while of America's history, there was a Supreme Court ruling laying out that movies did not have the protection of the First Amendment in free speech. And so if you watch a lot of older movies that came out in between, I guess you could say, the 30s and the 60s, a lot of things that some, I guess you could say, writers and I guess you could say, well, script writers wanted to go into, they couldn't because there was a whole load of restrictions on Hollywood at that time. That would be like saying, yeah, you know, back in the 30s and 60s, there was free speech in American cinema. There really wasn't. If you look at it historically, there is now, you know, at least what they say. But that doesn't make a lot of sense, especially here, because China has some of the strictest censorship in the world, just next to North Korea. And this guy's saying, well, they have good movies, so that counts. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, let's be fair for a minute. China probably has good cinema because they ripped off ours. So
yeah,
it's our cinema.
You remember that movie that they made about a year and a half ago that was about the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, and they made it look like they just were doing so well and they were fighting the American imperialist dogs. You remember that video? I mean, that movie?
I think I remember it.
Yeah, you know, we only saw clips of it. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was still interesting to me that they would even show, like, the Chinese just assaulting the American positions in waves and dying in hordes, and they made it look like a good thing. Like, I didn't get it. Anyways, we're gonna get back to this video.
Вещи замечательные. Так что, ну, я не могу, да, желать судьбы какой-то одной страны со своим народом, другой совершенно стране, с совершенно другим народом, но если выбирать между чем-то, то, опять же, да, в зависимости от того, между чем и чем мы выбираем.
Но мне кажется, сейчас уже идет ужесточение некоторое на цензуру.
Ужесточение идет, но я думаю, что в нынешнем положении, может быть, так и надо.
Так и надо? А почему?
Ну, потому что каждый защищает свои интересы. И интересы у всех разные. Вот. И люди, которые высказываются против, порой они... Может быть, не за Россию, а...
Well, here's the thing, though. If people are supporting the war, what's to say that that's not for their own interests as well? I don't know. Like, what if the CEO of the Sukhoi company comes out and he's pro-war? You know, it's kind of like the CEO of Lockheed Martin coming out in support of the war in Iraq. You know, it's like, that's really the same thing. He's got his own interests to keep the war going. You know, you can't ever just sit there and go, you know, well, if you support the war, you support the national interest. That's good for everyone. If you don't support the war, you support your own interests. Really, in the end, picking either side, you can end up supporting your own interests depending on who you are. That doesn't really make a lot of sense as a statement.
Свои интересы, скажем так.
То есть вы считаете, что, в принципе, правильно, если государство определяет, о чем можно говорить, о чем нельзя?
В определенное время, да, это я считаю верно.
То есть пока что, да. Вот у вас Китай ассоциируется со свободным государством или нет?
Знаете, я была в Шанхае в 2018 году. Там присваивали рейтинг людям. И если они неблагонадежные, вы знаете, им даже туалетную бумагу не выдадут в туалете, у них там автоматически. А знаете, там такая ситуация очень жесткая. Там очень жестко отслеживают связи каждого китайца друг с другом. И если кто-то из неблагонадежных общается с благонадежным, у благонадежного снимает рейтинг. И, знаете, такое начинается атомизированное общество. Они вроде как работают, но на единое государство. Но там вообще о свободе выбора речи нет. Свобода выбора, к счастью, осталась только...
Yes. Once again, there was a bit of a saving grace. She was kind of right with China. They don't really have the social credit system per se yet. It was suggested by the Communist Party there. They threw it around a little bit and then they dropped it back in around 2018, 2019. It never actually went into effect. But in a way, they still have social credit. There are other ways that they enforce that in China. So somewhat true in some regard, but in the other, this is completely untrue. Freedom of choice exists only in our country. You know, there's a lot of people in America, and I still run into, well, not a lot. It's actually quite small. It's just that every once in a while you run into them. So for some reason, you're always just inclined to say a lot, but it's quite small, actually, according to public polling. But every once in a while, you'll run into someone who's pro-Russian in the United States, and there's nothing that will happen to them. They don't go to prison. They don't get eyeballed by the government. They don't get labeled a domestic terrorist or start having their rights slowly stripped away from them bit by bit. People in America truly do have the freedom of choice, even if that choice sometimes doesn't make all too much sense. One has the right to follow through on that choice. And that's something you do not see in Russia. You are either pro-war or you're in prison.
Well, I will say one thing to disagree with you slightly on that. The United States won't punish you in terms of the government for expressing your freedom of speech unless it's a crime. But in the United States, the corporations basically take the place of the government in, I guess, policing free speech.
Well, you know, that's a whole other thing that kind of becomes political. But on the governmental level, and we're talking about the government, the government will not oppress your freedom of speech in the United States, no matter what. Or well, unless there's a very odd situation like the Second World War, then they will. But by and large, you can generally get away with saying whatever you want around here without getting in much trouble.
Момент времени в текущей конфигурации только в нашей стране. При всей жесткости, которая сейчас происходит, и жести, которая происходит.
Ну, а в общем, если кратко, на ваш взгляд, Россия и Китай — это сейчас скорее такие родственные государства, близкие или нет?
Мы сейчас скорее становимся дружными из-за, наверное, геополитической ситуации, если уж так можно рассматривать. Но по факту мы всегда, наверное, были ближе не к востоку, а к Европе, наверное, и в культурном плане, и экономические взаимосвязи у нас более тесно, более сильные экономические взаимосвязи, наверное, были все-таки с Европейским Союзом, чем с Китаем. А мне кажется, что, наверное, мы ближе к Европе, чем к Китаю. Но это не означает, что мы должны ориентироваться только на один курс. Мы должны брать хорошее и что-то от Европейского Союза, и что-то хорошее от Китая.
Я сторонник в этом смысле вот такой общесоциальной, да, теории вот общественного договора Гоббса, что мы, народ, мы отдаем какую-то часть своих свобод в обмен, ну, на какую-то заботу, которую проявляет государство. Так или иначе, без государства жить нельзя, и, ну, оно имеет право требовать, скажем так, что-то взамен, и я считаю, что иногда это даже полезно. То есть, ну, народ сам не обязательно знает, что ему нужно. И если народ будет делать то, что ему хочется, получится анархия. Ну, если он всегда будет делать то, что ему хочется.
Там запрещены были определенные слова в определенный момент, не цензурились, типа «я не согласен», или было запрещен образ с ухом.
The old classic slash and burn against.
Look at this look on this guy's face. He's like, oh damn, he got me on that one. Winnie the Pooh was censored.
He did get me there. You can't show Winnie in China unless you want to get put in the slammer, and then you meet Piglet in there. But anyways.
Это, кстати, неправда. Винни-Пух не запрещен. Насчет Китая, слушай, это вот...
It's false! What, are you joking? Like, you can't even show the Winnie the Pooh cartoon in China. That is fact. And he's gonna sit there, well, that's not really true. You know, like, during the Hong Kong protests and riots that started off in 2019, Winnie the Pooh was used as a sign of dissension against the Chinese government, and anyone found wearing Winnie the Pooh stuff or making Winnie the Pooh imagery would be put in jail. And so this is a straight-up lie.
Ну, как тебе сказать, я скорее поддерживаю политику Китая в этом смысле, потому что, да, беспокоит меня Гондурас, потому что если мы посмотрим на контрасте, то мне ближе скорее более-менее честная цензура, когда тебе буквально бьют по шапке и говорят, что нельзя делать, чем вот всякие эти теневые баны, какие-то вот эти очень сложные моменты, которые вот в западной культуре происходят. В этом смысле я предпочитаю честность и какую-то твердость вот этих вот вывертов, которые нет, у нас нет запрета, у нас все хорошо, но при этом, и как бы если покопаться, очевидно, что примерно то же самое, если не хуже.
Китай часто критикуют вот со стороны, что там очень сильная цензура со стороны государства. Тебе кажется, что в принципе в России цензуры нет?
Ну, в каком-то смысле, да. Ее нет. Потому что, ну, на самом деле, я повторюсь, ты можешь сейчас сделать практически все, что угодно.
Ну, там вот, например, вот только что новость вышла утром, что женщину оштрафовали на 30 тысяч за то, что она написала «нет» в 3 точки «е» в конце.
Напиши это у себя и посмотрим, арестуют тебя или нет.
No.
Скорее всего, эта женщина делала что-то.
Oh, so it's freedom of speech unless you've been called multiple times exercising freedom of speech. Then you'll be arrested. That's what she just said right there. That's interesting.
На какой-то такой должности, ну, например, она журналистка. Ну, условно. Я не говорю, что у нас все хорошо, если что, я не об этом.
Да.
Didn't have the right job to do it.
Ну, не то чтобы правая, но в плане свободы слова и вообще свободы, мне кажется, что...
She doesn't really make a lot of sense at this point.
Ну, достаточно ее много в стране.
А вам не кажется, что в России может так же, как в Китае, случиться или нет?
Нет, здесь другие люди. Вы знаете, у них есть и сохранилось понятие Родины. Не у всех, но это понятие Родины сохранилось. И те люди, которые сохраняют это понятие Родины в своем сердце, они вот это ощущение свободы поселяют в других сердцах.
Ну, в общем, если подытожить, я так понимаю, тебе будет ок, если, скажем, Россия станет авторитарным государством абсолютно.
Знаешь, я человек скорее политичный, я в античном понимании идиот, так сказать, поэтому у меня с этим как бы особых проблем нет. И откровенно скажу, мне кажется, что у большинства наших граждан с этим проблем тоже нет. Есть какое-то, ну, я их пассионариями не могу назвать, но есть люди, вот, которые считают, что нужно вот что-то такое делать, но это обычно такой клоунадой появляется, что пока я скорее склоняюсь вот в сторону того, что ну и ладно. В принципе, может даже к лучшему не пойдет. Но это зависит от того, как это будет реализовано. Любая вещь может обернуться и злом, и благом. Это как, знаешь, рыба-фугу. Ее, если ее приготовить в масле, будет очень вкусно, а если нет, то, ну, будет вкусно, но в последний раз.
Ладно, спасибо тебе большое.
And of course,
How can you say so little in so many words?
I mean, like, that guy right there, I think he does have a future in politics, Matthew, because he was saying so
Maybe.
little, but so much at the same time. But with that, huge credit once again to 1420 for showing us the mindset of Russians inside of Russia. And we can see that a decent amount of them believe that either they have total free speech, which of course is a little delusional, or they're totally fine with being cracked down on by the government, which may be the reason why we're not really seeing the Russian, I guess you could say, culture of society go into any kind of rapid collapse, because the people themselves believe that what the Russian government is doing is totally acceptable. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on down into an area around Moscow. We don't really know where this video came from. It came from inside of Russia Today, and I just had to show it to y'all because it's interesting. Here's the video.
Блядь! Это Z, это победа, это, блядь, мне повезло, своих, блядь.
Wait, Randy, this is the noise right here I make whenever, this is actually the noise a Russian soldier makes when he looks up and he sees that the drone's already dropped the bomb on top of him. This is the sound he makes. That's the sound.
Не повезло, своих, блядь, не бросаем, все правильно, все так, надо.
I don't even.
Poor fella. I hope he gets the help he needs one day.
V. Like he's saying it like he's trying to make like like kids understand what the letters are. I don't really understand. Anyways,
He's trying to dumb it down for the Russian public.
I think the guy was honestly insane, but I had to show that to y'all because that was just, it was funny. Anyways, we're going to be moving on from Russia, and we're now going to be moving on into the Netherlands and also Sweden as well, because we've gotten some interesting news from the Netherlands. We saw at a harbor today, right off the Dutch coast, that some more Bradleys were getting unloaded from ships. Now, if y'all know anything, y'all been watching the news on this channel, and I'm sure many of y'all have, y'all would know that the first shipment of Bradleys has already entered Ukraine by railroad from what we've been able to tell. But we're seeing another massive unloading of Bradleys into Europe. And it's making me wonder, is this the United States, on picture, preparing for another package to send to Ukraine that will include more Bradleys? We already know that the 50 original Bradleys have already been sent in by railroad. We've seen it. We saw it on film about a week ago. But this is once again another massive allotment of vehicles being brought into Europe, and they have no clear goal or aim. And so I'm wondering if these are going to be a part of another support package. And if they are, and you can see that it's heading to Poland and Lithuania, which is very close to Ukraine, this may just be sitting on the side of the Polish border, and we haven't made the official announcement yet that these are slated for Ukraine. So we may even see that the Ukrainians get more Bradleys, and they start to phase out a lot of their MTLBs and other Soviet-era armored personnel carriers for these modern, heavy-hitting Bradleys that can carry not only about 8 troops apiece, but they also have the 25mm Bushmaster, a fairly effective gun, and TOW-2s to use against the Russians. So fairly interesting to see. What do you make of this, Matthew?
It looks like equipment that might be going to Ukraine sometime soon.
I would largely say I think it is. So with that, thank you for the very observant information, Matthew. And we're now going to be moving on out of the Netherlands. Let me make sure. Okay, we have nothing in America today. Just had to double check. And we're going to be moving up to Sweden now, to Stockholm, where a decent amount of our Lee Spring Army viewers that are not from an English-speaking country come from. It's a beautiful country filled with very interesting people. And not only are these people incredibly interesting, but they're also incredibly smart people. They have their own defense industry built from the ground up, and a lot of the equipment they use was either built at home or has been heavily modified to a impressive Swedish standard. And one of these systems that they built within their own country, with their own technology and their own abilities, is the Archer artillery system. The Archer artillery system is one hell of a machine, even putting the Caesar SPG, provided by the French, to shame. This thing has a high rate of fire. It uses a 150mm howitzer like almost every other, I guess you could say, NATO artillery piece, although Sweden is not officially a part of NATO yet. And the Swedish produced 48 of these. They're now transporting 12 of their 48, an entire 25%, 1 in every 4 of their Archer SPGs that they have in the Swedish army, down to Poland to then be shipped into Ukraine. These things are, I guess you could say, somewhat game changers. I would say that it's taking the accuracy and range of a Caesar and providing a little bit of extra firepower per minute, because the reload time on this thing is a little bit shorter than a Caesar as well. It's an autoloader, so the gun automatically gets loaded and fires. It is bizarre, almost practically out of this world looking, even compared to a Caesar and a Bodana, which we've seen every once in a while and do look pretty advanced, but this thing really takes the cake. Not only is the cab advanced in its design, but also the idea of an entire oscillating turret system for the artillery piece. Usually, we see that the turret alone can rotate and the gun can traverse, of course, vertically, but we've never seen an artillery piece, at least that I can think of, where the internal workings of the autoloader also rotates and elevates with the artillery, well, with the piece itself. This is something that is somewhat revolutionary in a way, and really interesting to see that the Ukrainians will have some of these things and use them. And hopefully we'll be getting some data information on these things here in the near future. We don't know if Ukrainian crews have been trained to operate these Archers yet, but if they have, we may expect to see these things in operation within a couple of weeks' time. Now, moving on from all of the international news and making our way on towards the Kherson front, we're going to be moving on into Lviv today, where we actually saw that there was once again a special visit. In case of y'all don't know, at one point, Lviv was actually a part of Poland back in the, I guess you could say, the 1920s to the 1930s. And I'll show you a little map here, map of Poland in 1935. It's just a round year. And if we look at this map of Poland, you can see that Lviv was actually called Lvov, and it was fairly deep inside of the Polish land. Poland has actually had a lot of border changes throughout its history. Even the borders that are represented here do not represent the height of Polish expansion, and I guess you could say control that they had under the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which is where Poland was its largest, but still, Poland was a little bit larger there than it is now. But still, Lviv was inside of Poland, and during the Second World War, the Battle of Lviv against, interestingly enough, the Soviets, proved to be a very decisive moment in Poland's last stand against both the Germans and the Russians, who were crushing them on both sides, and it's something that is commemorated yearly, and that commemoration came around today. The Battle of Lviv is celebrated on today, January 11th of every single year, and we saw that the Polish president and Zelensky made a visit to Lviv to commemorate those brave Polish soldiers who laid down their lives both against fascism and communism way back in the Second World War. And we can see the video of how the city of Lviv greeted the president of Poland here in this clip, and it is electric. I mean, like, it's crazy. So here's the clip. See them all clapping and cheering, trying to get as close as they can. And we can see they're all crowding around.
Is Zelensky in that pile somewhere?
I don't really know. I think it may just be the Polish president, Andrzej. And I think it is. And he is getting mobbed. People are in love with this guy. Very interesting to see a leader of a nation mingle in a crowd of people without much in terms of spacing or security. And it's kind of not, it's actually really nice to see that this guy is actually just mingling with the common people. You don't really see a lot of leaders do that, especially presidents of the United States, because the security concerns here in America have gotten so strict that people are hardly ever allowed within close range of a sitting president unless if it's been heavily choreographed beforehand and they make sure that this person is completely removed of everything, including fingernails if need be. But I'm just kidding.
Kind of sketchy considering like how violent the Russians are getting, sending bombs to like embassies and things like that. It's kind of brave and risky at the same time.
But I've always got to commemorate, I've really got to give a huge praise to a leader of a nation who actually delves among their people, because delving and diving amongst the crowds of the citizenry has always been something dangerous. Even back in ancient times, one could easily be killed. Yet a leader who always gets around their citizens and actually deals with them right in their face is always a respected leader, and always one you can count on to guide your nation quite well, because they're not scared of actually getting right in front of the people that they're representing and leading. And I've got to say, this guy is really setting a standard for that, and I've got to give him a round of applause, and I hope the entirety of the Lee Spring Army gives this guy a round of applause for doing something like this, because not only is it brave, it's fairly dangerous on his end, and I'm sure he knows the risks involved in getting in a crowd like this. And so with that, we're going to be moving on, but once again, always wanted to give a little shout out to I'm sorry, everyone. I'm going to have to call him Andrzej Duda. I know that's pronounced a little bit differently in Polish, but unfortunately, I don't think I'll ever be able to get that pronunciation down. So we're going to call the Polish president Andrzej Duda. But still, a great guy with balls of steel, much like Zelensky. And if he was put in the same situation, I wouldn't doubt that Andrzej would really be the guy to guide Poland through it. And so with that, we're moving on into the next bit of news, up towards Kyiv. And we have seen that while the Belarusian threat has never been a serious one that's coalesced itself over the course of 11 months of war, it does appear that the Ukrainians are once again making precautions to ensure that the Belarusians do not cross the northern border in case if they do join the war. And by doing this, they're laying down a large amount of mines inside of minefields to make sure that the most advantageous rounds of advance for the Belarusians, if they did try an offensive, would be mired with explosives that they would have to slowly clear out, in ensuring that Ukrainian artillery could pick off a decent amount of their forces before they ever came in contact with proper Ukrainian infantry. And we can see right here them planting these mines and covering them back up. And I gotta tell you, that's gotta be a tough job, because you can see right there with how the ground's being laid back down, this stuff is rock solid right now due to the weather. So this guy is like practically moving around rocks to put on top of this mine.
Is this like a permafrost or something?
I would say permafrost is much further down in the ground. I guess you could say this is like a good winter freeze on the ground, but it will thaw out in the summer, and at least the topsoil will be usable again. But way deep down, even in Ukraine, I believe there is permafrost, but it's not that close to the surface. So with that, we're going to be moving on from this little clip and on into our next one. Once again, fairly interesting to see, and if the Belarusians do invade, we will have a fairly good idea of what will happen. And let's go over that real quick with the hypothetical scenario of the Ukrainians laying down minefields. Obviously, they can't mine the entire border. They most likely do not have enough mines and numbers to be able to do such a thing, but they can mine the most important areas. Most likely, well, we're not going to go into where the minefields most likely are, because then that might give them away, but one thing we can say is that they are on the advantageous routes. That's usually where you lay down minefields, which forces your enemy into areas that will be a little bit more difficult to push through in an offensive. Areas with less developed roads, or just less roads in general. An area that's less dense in population. That's usually a more difficult area to push through, because there's not as much of an ease of logistics as you would find on major roads. And so, by laying down these minefields, obviously, the Belarusians have two options. Either they have to slowly try and make their way through the minefields and demine them on their way, or they have to go through the more difficult routes and probably incur casualties that way. Either way, the Ukrainians are ensuring that the Belarusian forces will sustain higher casualties if they begin an offensive across the border, and that is a good thing. And so it's nice to see that they are finally laying down these mines as an early precaution, because just in case the Belarusians ever do join this war, and I'm still I'm still greatly in the camp that it's very unlikely that the Belarusians will ever join. We've never seen them join. This comes up once a month. If they did, the Ukrainians are ready for them. Anyways, we're going to be moving on down into our location unknowns. And we have a couple of interesting clips here as well. And so starting off with our first one, we saw the slow motion video of a D-30 firing. And let me make sure I'm correct on this, because y'all may notice that the caption here says it's an M777, and this is clearly not an M777. So let me make sure that the D-30 is the correct artillery piece. And it appears that that may actually be a D-20, and let me check that real quick. Actually, it's not a D-20. I wonder what that is, because It doesn't look like a D-30, and neither does it look like a D-20, and it's certainly not an M777. So what artillery piece is that? We're going to need some help from the live chat to identify what artillery piece this is, because we don't really know what it is. We can see them firing it, and also, really interestingly enough, the frame rate on this camera was good enough that we could actually see the shell. Right there. You saw it, Matthew?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh, man, that's insane. You know, it's so weird to see that. Like, it's so bizarre to think. And that thing weighs a pretty good bit, too. Probably about 50 pounds, maybe, around 40. And that thing is flying so fast that if you didn't have the slow motion camera, you would have never seen the shell. It would have just been like a puff of smoke, and it was gone. It's just insane. It really is crazy to think about the firepower a larger artillery piece, and I'm assuming that this is around 152 millimeters in size, can wield. And a lot of people are saying that it's a miss to be, and I believe it probably is a miss to be. But with that, that's the end of the clip. And once again, the Ukrainian artillery is in action. You can also see that Snowfall has covered most of Ukraine in all of these videos. Well, most of the videos you'll see today. Snowfall is prevalent in most areas of the front line. And of course, that is incredibly important because the title says that the Russians are freezing in the snow. And if you stick around, you will see once we get to the Bakhmut front that the Russian offensive was largely stalled because Russian soldiers are now freezing to death, literally. We'll get down there in a little bit and show you all that, but with that, we're moving on to the next clip in the location unknowns, where we also saw 3 Russian troops get captured.
Как отношения к вам? Где там? Да. А почему назад не ушли?
Хуже, чем, блядь, обнулят.
Обнулят, в смысле, блядь, минуснут нахуй, да?
Да.
Все, я понял. Все, залазим.
See them guiding them to some kind of a collection point, most likely.
А, вы группа эвакуации?
Да.
И что?
Раненых и этот, 300-х и 200-х вытаскиваем.
Ага.
Круглые сутки.
Много?
Ну, вчера одного 300-го вытащили.
Нет, потерь много?
Потерь, да.
Понятно, что они идут, блядь, полный рост, но...
Разворачивайся, разворачивайся, жопой садись.
We now see them putting them in the back of a
Так,
car.
хлопцы, ну у нас не премиум поездка. Извините, пожалуйста. У нас тигров нет, КамАЗов нет. Все, ножки.
See that he's in there. They're trying to shove his feet a little bit further in.
Ну, удобно, сам себе.
His foot's sticking out.
Сядь нормально,
Just
как
close
на
the
лавочке.
door.
Ноги под себя.
Just close the door.
Все, все сели?
Да.
Ой, молодцы.
All right, now they're in there.
Забывай нахуй. О!
They're trying to pack him in like
They're
luggage.
slamming it down on their feet.
They're slamming it down. They're like, close, dang it, close.
Вот так.
Have you ever wanted the ability to pack 3 Russians inside the back of your car and the horsepower to pull that car along down the road? Then you need to get yourself a Bodana. The Bodana car can fit just about 3 Russians in the back and have enough power to get you all the way from Kiev to Kharkiv, making sure that you can drop them off at the nearest prisoner of war camp. Make sure to get yourself a Bodano today, because this thing is definitely laying down the ability to take Russian prisoners. Guts, glory, surrender. And so with that, that's the end
Let's
of that
just
clip.
like appreciate the like for just a moment. The Russians didn't have enough sense to get their feet tucked in, so they didn't get banged by the the trunk like 50 times.
Like you kept on seeing the Ukrainians like shoving their feet in. They're like, no, get in there. And then they finally did, so they're just like, whatever. They start shutting it on their feet. Oh, well, maybe they learned after that. I don't know. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip, which is kind of funny in a way. And we're now going to be moving on to the next one, where you can see some artillery shells and a little bit of a heated situation. The Russians actually ended up bombarding a Ukrainian artillery position here in this clip, and what y'all are about to see is that after the artillery fire subsided, it didn't hit the ammunition that the Ukrainians had in the open getting ready to be used by the artillery, but it did cause some fires very close to it. And if these fires continue to burn directly onto the shells, the heat could cause the powder to explode inside, leading to a detonation of all the shells, and these Ukrainian artillerists raced out of their dugouts near this fixed artillery position to grab the shells that are near the fire and take them away so that way they don't go up in a giant ball of fire.
Вот такая хуйня, ребята, блядь.
We're going to have to mute it, but you can see the smoke smoldering here after their position was hit. And you can see all of the shells right up here. And I believe, if I'm correct, they're all 155 millimeter shells. We can see right here that a fire is burning near him, and this soldier is going over there, and he is trying to pull the shells away from the open flame and towards an area a little bit further away so that way they can stamp the fire out and make sure that none of these shells explode. Once again, just in case you do not know, most artillery shells of the high explosive variant are not solid steel. Some people do believe that they are solid steel, and they are not. All of them have explosive filler inside of them, and that's what causes them to be able to project shrapnel over such a large area, about the size of a football field. And so with that, we can see that the Ukrainians were able to get it out of the fire. The video ends there, but I'm assuming that they stamped the fires out to make sure that it doesn't continue to spread and then reach the shells again and cause a detonation. So you got to give credit to these artillerists, one, for keeping composure under the barrage, two, for surviving it, and not only that, immediately going outside and ensuring that they'll be able to survive the ongoing small smoldering flames that are around them, so that way it doesn't cause a massive ammo detonation that then takes them out anyways, although they survived the other two things. And so once again, fairly interesting scene. You've got to give it to the Ukrainians' dedication to duty in this regard, and making sure that even after a barrage was horrifying in its own right, they went out there and they immediately got back to work. With that, we're moving on into the next clip of news, and our last bit of location unknown news, where we saw the Russian losses for today. And interestingly enough, the Russian losses have taken a little bit of a nosedive in terms of the infantry losses. They've gone from around 700 to 800 a day, which has been incredibly high. Just for those of y'all who don't know, the average for the British to lose every single day in World War II on average was around 410. And so even right now, the British are doing in World War II about as good as the Russians are doing in Ukraine. And you got to remember, they were fighting a world war against the Japanese, against the Germans and such, everywhere across the entire world, and they were still taking less losses than the Russians were. So they've taken 490 troops killed today. We don't know how many wounded. We can't really get a number on that. We've seen that they've also destroyed 5 armored personnel carriers. They destroyed 9 supply trucks. Once again, supply trucks are incredibly important, and we can see that the Russians have lost 4,826 of them. We don't know how many supply trucks the Russians really have left anymore, because we know that, at least based off of the original numbers that the logistics units have, 100% of their trucks have been destroyed. However, they're continuing to be destroyed, which is implying two things. Either they're requisitioning civilian vehicles to be used for supply trucks, they are either renovating old ones that were in supply yards to get them up to a serviceable spec so that way they can continue to be used, or it's something else that we're not able to really account for. But another 9 has been destroyed today, and once again, their supply forces have been taking incredibly high losses. Unbelievably high losses, as a matter of fact, when you really look at it. And that's something that we haven't been going over a lot lately, but something that always needs to be pointed out. The Russians also lost another 10 tanks today. This is a massive difference from the typical 2 to 3 tanks that have been lost. And every once in a while, we'll see a day where the Russians lose 24 or 16. But losing tanks in this number is something you don't really see often a lot anymore. But another 10 tanks lost is another BTG, a battalion tactical group, that has been entirely devoid of tanks today. Devoided of tanks. And so we can now see that the Russians are taking some more losses, at least in the fights around Bakhmut, where most of these armored vehicles are being destroyed. We also saw that another 5 towed artillery systems were destroyed today, a fairly decent number, once again adding to the large 2,078 artillery pieces that have been lost. Another 2 drones have been destroyed. Another 3 MLRSs have been destroyed. We don't really get to discern which ones are which. They don't tell us if they're Uragans or Grads. The general assumption we can make is that it is most likely a Grad that's been destroyed. Uragans are in somewhat smaller numbers in both the Ukrainian and Russian armed forces, so I'll assume the 2 of those were a Grad. Maybe one of them was an Uragan, or the third one may have been a Grad as well. And they lost no aircraft. But
they did lose another Bobcat.
They did lose another one of those freaking skid steers. We don't know where the Russians are losing these skid steers, but I'm not doubting that they're being lost, because the Ukrainians are very conservative in reporting the loss of a special equipment vehicle. It only one additional vehicle is only lost on average about every 5 days to a week. So we know that number is.
I think Ukraine might be hitting the Bobcats just for our benefit at this point, so we'll go bonkers every night reporting it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think they're honestly just trying to get a laugh out of everyone, like us, like where we're like, "Oh my god, they got another skid steer!" Because I think that maybe, I don't know. I feel like they are getting it, though, because it's so rarely reported that they got another one, that it has to be the case that this is another skid steer that's just been knocked out. But once again, the losses are painting a picture that the Russians are still taking very high losses for very low amounts of ground. And of course, I have to make a disclaimer here that while these numbers are the ones that we go by on stream, they may not be entirely accurate. The number of Russian killed may be higher, they may be lower, they may be considerably higher, or they may be considerably lower. We're not really, you never really can get an actual account. And once again, to give you all an idea, this is not anything special to this war. We don't really know how many Afghanis died in the war in Afghanistan. We have no idea how many Iraqis died in the Gulf War or in the invasion of Iraq in 2003. We don't even know how many Soviets died in the Second World War. These kinds of numbers are usually just an approximate, and we assume that this is somewhere in the middle range of being a little too low or a little too high, somewhere in the dead average. So once again, while we're going off these numbers, the number of Russian deaths could be way higher or it could be way lower. So with that, we're going to be moving on from this little bit of news, our last bit of Russian losses and location unknown news for the day, and now it's time for us to start moving on into the freezing cold, frigid lines of Ukraine, where snow has fallen on every single bit and the temperature has plummeted below freezing. It is somewhere around the range of -4 to -7 degrees Celsius, the last I checked, across the entirety of the Ukrainian front line. These kinds of temperatures are incredibly difficult for most people to survive in, even with winter gear, and frostbite can start to set in fairly easily. And we're starting to see that that is becoming a very bad and sad reality in a way for the Russians, but a very beneficial reality for the Ukrainians, as of course the Ukrainian supply lines, being defensive in nature, have been able to stay intact for the most part incredibly well throughout the majority of the war. And so while Ukrainian forces appear to be on video well supplied, well fed, and well heated, the Russians on the other hand have none of those things going for them. Right now they are freezing to death, and we're about to get to those videos here really soon. But before we get to those videos, I've seen that Matthew's run a poll. And it's been a fairly interesting poll. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we have two polls to address, and the very first one said, if the Russians in the video were asked to test their free speech theory, would they do it? 84%, the overwhelming majority, said that no, they know what happens if they do that. 8% said yes, they would try and find out, and 8% said unsure. So I'm definitely going to go with the 84%. They definitely wouldn't try it because they know what's going to happen. And that simply proves that they're lying. What is the purpose of that test? And I think they all know deep down, even if some of them are brainwashed, that they can't just go around saying what they want to say. It's Russia, and they know what kind of country they live in. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would agree with that completely. I think that their idea of free speech is only on the by and large, and they don't understand that the government's going to take action against them and have them arrested for what they say if it goes against the government. The only reason they think they have free speech is because they've never had a thought or an idea that's gone beyond what the government finds suitable. Now, real quick, I'm going to make a little bit of a statement here of differences in between the United States and Russia, because Matthew brought up earlier, and it's a fairly decent point on its surface, but I'll go about my thoughts in a second, that the United States has corporations, and I guess you could say society as a whole, that oppresses free speech. There's a little bit of a difference, however. While a corporation, such as a social media platform, can ban you for certain political views, it doesn't stop you from going out and saying it wherever you want. You can go out into public venues, say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want to other people. The difference in between the United States and Russia is that while depending on the ebb and flow of society over here, some things are accepted and some things aren't. You can look through our history and find all the things that have been accepted and not accepted. Just look at Senator McCarthy during the Red Scare, trying to quash communism in Hollywood and also later on in the U.S. Army. And you could see right there that at the time, communism wasn't really accepted in America, but if you were brazen enough, you could go around and say it. The U.S. government, in a way, wouldn't really put you in prison for it. They would just have you revoked from your job. And even nowadays, that is a similar instance in certain kinds of, I guess you could say, realms. But in Russia, it has always been the case that if you say anything that's against the government's official stance, you will be put in prison for it. Or even worse, you may end up in a work camp or even killed for what you're saying. Nowadays, it's not really to that extreme, at least from what we get told. Well, actually, no. I would actually have to disagree on my own statement right there. Oligarchs are falling out windows like no tomorrow, and if that shows anything, that shows if you dissent against the Russian government, there is still the threat of death against you if you're important enough of a person to do that. But getting back to what I'm saying, the Russians know that they really have no actual freedom of speech that's protected by the government, and that if they try and say anything, they will be quashed. So with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well. And with that, let's get on into the questions.
All right, so we have another poll to go over, and the second one says, Soledar is still under heavy attack. Why does Russia want to secure this victory so badly? And this was something I was beginning to wonder today after I saw that they're keeping up the, I guess, the severity of their attack on Soledar. It really doesn't make much sense to me, but I think I'm starting to piece it together. It looks like 61% said they want a morale booster, 25% said it is strategically important to Russia, 5% said they are running out of supplies, and 9% said unsure or none of the above. Now, this is going to probably shock a few people, but I'm trying to put myself in the mind of an orc strategist here. I think it's a strategically important area for them because of this reason. I think they're going to try to enter Bakhmut from the Soledar area if they can successfully capture it, and try to see if they can use that angle of attack to take Bakhmut, because that's their ultimate goal, to be able to move up and move on beyond Bakhmut. But there's no telling, but that's my guess. Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that while that is a pretty good assessment, they still have to secure the southern end, because even while taking Soledar, now you're looking at a two-sided battle for the city, not only from the east, but the north and the east as well. But the Ukrainians will still have intact supply lines to keep their defenders running, and so once again, it'll be another grueling battle, probably for 2 months on end, to just try and push through Krasnohora and finally onto the M03 and cut off that supply line entirely. So while it seems as though the Russians are still attempting to do that, I think that they're going to have to, of course, take Chasiv Yar and cut off the, let me make sure I'm getting this highway name correct, the T0504, to be able to really force the Ukrainians' hand in withdrawing from the city. We know that the Russians cannot take it on a head-on assault. They've been doing that for nearly 3 months now, and we've only seen them finally take this one small industrial area here to the far eastern outskirt of the town, and that's it, over 4 months of battle. So we know that there'll have to be some kind of encirclement action, and you can only do an encirclement if you conduct it on both flanks, both the left and the right. And right now we see them conducting an encirclement of Soledar actually on both sides, which has finally succeeded. And from what we can tell today, the Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from Soledar proper, and now the Russians are most likely moving into the town as we speak. But beyond that, you can see right there, the only way they took Soledar was to create an encirclement on both sides. They have to do that at large to be able to take Bakhmut as a whole. They'll never be able to take the town through direct combat. They'll have to take it through some kind of encirclement or a flanking maneuver. And so I'm going to be waiting to see if that does happen. Right now we have two predictions. Matthew thinks that they are going to take Soledar and then most likely take Bakhmut town if they're able to. And I believe that they still have to complete both sides of the encirclement by taking Krasnohora and also Chasiv Yar and cutting off the two major supply lines to be able to finally push the Ukrainians out of Bakhmut. I still think, in my opinion, Bakhmut is pretty much an impregnable fortress even right now, and it's still going to take quite a while, if the Russians are ever even able to take it, for them to do it. It'll most likely be another 2 months or a month at best. But once again, try not to crystal ball, because crystal balling never really works. If you ever look at anyone who does it, they're usually wrong. So I'm not going to give a real time frame for when I think the Russians will take it. I think the Ukrainians will most likely hold it, but if the Russians do, it'll be a pretty decent longer amount of time from what we're seeing right now. And so with that,
one thing is for certain though, if they do take Soledar, that is definitely not a major victory, because Soledar is basically meaningless when it comes to the bigger picture of the war. It's strategically insignificant. But there's no doubt in my mind that the orcs are going to make it out to be a humongous feat of warfare if they actually do take it.
Oh, they will. Soledar is one of the smallest towns that the Russians are probably ever going to make a big deal about taking. Soledar only has a population of 10,000 people, pre-war numbers in 2020. There have been many other towns that they've taken of larger size. Let's look at this. Population of Popasna, which was taken a long time ago, of Popasna, 19,984. This town here, which the Russians really didn't make a big deal about taking, had twice the population of Soledar, and the Russians are acting like the slow movements that they've been making for months on end around the Soledar direction are just massive, monumental, biblical even. They're going to change the course of the war forever and ever, and nothing will be the same again. And it's one of the smallest towns that they've ever actually taken. So in terms of the strategic significance of Soledar on its own, it's not that large. The strategic significance for the course of this battle, it's it's a little significant because it's the first defensive line that the Ukrainians had before they fall back on Krasnohora. But now they have to take Krasnohora, and that's a whole other can of worms. So with that, I hope we address...
And Mark Hunt said they want the free salt. Mark, trust me, they've got enough salt. They're very salty already. They definitely don't need any more.
They got plenty of salt with all the whining that the propagandists do. I can promise you that. So with that, let's get on. I think that was the last poll, if I'm correct, Matthew.
That was the last one. So with that being said, we're on to our super chat questions, our regular 3 questions. We have the first one from Beef Taco, who makes a return after a small little hiatus. Beef Taco puts in a $25 donation and says, what are the top 2 weapons that Russia and NATO each possess, but they're not in the theater yet?
The top 2 weapons that NATO possesses would most likely be, if I had to think about it, I'm trying to think. In terms of what Ukraine does not possess, and he said top 2 weapons that the NATO alliance has as a whole?
Yes, the top 2 weapons that Russia/NATO each possess, but are not in the theater yet.
The top weapon, I hate to say it, I don't always want to sound like this is a one-sided ordeal, but the honest truth is that the Russians have thrown everything they actually have that's usable at the Ukrainians, and none of it's worked. We've seen T-90Ms, we've seen Su-35s, we've seen Su-34s, we've seen Su-24s, we've seen Tu-22s. We've seen anything and everything that the Russians actually have that's usable, and we're ruling out, in case if there is someone who's about to say, but what about the T-14 Armata and the Su-57? If you look at the numbers of those vehicles, the Su-57 has only entered pre-production numbers. There is no actual production series of the Su-57 that's been implemented into air squadrons that the Russians actually use. And also, an interesting thing that a friend of mine pointed out the other day, who is an active serving member in the U.S. Space Force, which is really cool, and I always like to say that because it's just neat. The Su-57 actually isn't stealth. It's low visibility. So this thing does show up on a radar, it's just a smaller signature. Oh. So it's not really stealth.
So it's fake.
It's kind of fake, yeah. So at the roll it says it's a stealth multi-role fighter, but once you get into the entire breakdown of what it is lower visibility. It's not entirely stealth. It does have a radar cross-section that can be picked up, and you can find it. It's just going to be a lot harder to hold a radar lock because the cross-section is small enough that while it is identifiable as an aircraft, it's not large enough to make it fairly easy, or make it fairly easy to identify. Also, another thing about the Su-57 that's very interesting, and you can see as we go down here, and I'll try and get you all a really close-up picture of this thing, is that they don't use welding, they use rivets. Let me see if I can find that for y'all, because this is something that shows that the Russian aviation industry is a little bit behind. Rivets. Here we go. The rivets are very famous because no one in the world that makes a stealth aircraft uses rivets like this. That's not even rivets, actually. That's just screws. Like, they just screwed this part of the wing section on. No one does that.
Wood screws to put this plane together, like a Russian wood shop.
It's like plywood or something cheap. I don't know what the hell this really is, and also, is it just me, or does it not even look like it was a good job? Like, there's like plastic crap still around like the screws and everything.
Probably so. They didn't even take the wrapping off of it.
They didn't even take the wrapping off of it. And if you look at the F-22 as an example, F-22, let's see. I guess you could say fuselage skin. And I'll try and show y'all a close-up picture of the F-22 to give y'all an example of what a stealth American fighter looks like, close-up. I think that's about the closest we'll get. You don't see rivets, you see welds. No rivets.
I've actually never seen one that close up. I'm sure it's built well, but for some reason it looks a little sketchy, like that close-up angle.
Let me see if I can find a higher graphic image of an F-22 close-up. This was probably the best one we've got. And you can see that it's all flush. Welded on.
That looks clean on that one.
Yeah, no rivets. No rivets at all. And also it may have been the sun reflecting on certain surfaces that made it look a little interesting, but that's the huge difference in why an Su-57 is low visibility and an F-22 is a proper stealth fighter, because this one is flush, and you have to have flush surfaces on a stealth fighter and also certain angles to create no cross-section, which means that the radar is beams, because the radar works a lot like you screaming. Like when you scream and you hear an echo, that's the sound waves bouncing off of an object and returning to you. And usually from that echo, you can get kind of a rough approximation of where that came from. And that's how radars work. It's just that they don't use... Say what?
Sounds like sonar too.
Yeah, sonar and radar pretty much work the same. It's just one is for underwater and one's for in the air. But the way a stealth really works, it's not really about the coding so much, although the coding does help to dissipate the return radar signature. It's more so about the angles of the aircraft, and if you can find the best angles possible, you can deflect radar signatures incredibly well. You can actually see that on the F-117. To create the stealth profile, the bottom of the aircraft had to be perfectly flat. And if it's perfectly flat, there is nothing that will actually be bounced back to a radar. Every single radar beam that hits the bottom of that aircraft will be redirected to another direction, if it still even exists beyond the coding, to another area on the ground where the radar won't pick it up and it won't have a cross-section. The only time an F-117 was ever shot down is because it opened up its bomb bays, and the bomb bays had flat angles in them, and it was not perfectly flush, and they were finally able to get a cross-section on that F-117 and shoot it down over Serbia. So there is a big difference in between the Su-57 and that. Also, the T-14 Armada has never entered serial production either. The T-14 Armada is still in prototype phases and has never been introduced into the Army at large. And they say that they're serial versions, but if they had them, they would use them, and we don't see them. Also, the prototype versions, they only number less than 2 dozen, so there's not even a lot of those either. So, once again, the Russians have used the best of everything they have. The best system that NATO has that has not been introduced into Ukraine yet is any form of aircraft, and most specifically, the F-16. The F-16 is a multi-role aircraft. Not only can it take on air targets incredibly well, it can do anti-radiation missions against S-300 batteries and other forms of surface-to-air missiles that the Russians possess right now and use to try and dominate the areas under occupied control. And they can also do ground strike missions as well. They have the ability to do all three. And also anti-ship, although I don't know if the Ukrainians will really use them for anti-ship much. So to answer that question, Russians really don't have anything to put into this war anymore for me to even really answer the question. And for the West, I would say it's the F-16. If the Ukrainians got the F-16, I truly believe that that will be a war-changing aircraft, a war-changing vehicle. The war would never be the same. The Ukrainians would most likely have air superiority, and not only that, be able to use their close air support much more efficiently than the Soviet aircraft they have, because Soviet aircraft do not have the availability of ordnance that the F-16 would have. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on going, because if it wasn't for support like that, we wouldn't have interesting questions to answer, and also we wouldn't be able to keep this stream running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Sean Tiz, who puts in a $20 donation and says LSA are the most welcoming people and Slava Ukraine. And he puts it in Ukrainian. And Sean, I have to agree with you. The LSA is very, very welcoming, I got to say.
And I've got to thank you so much for the support, Sean Tiz. And I got to say that the Elite Spring Army really is a welcoming group. I haven't ever seen really rude and mean people in the Elite Spring Army. And usually Matthew does a really good job of calling those people out. So I got to say, it is definitely one of the best communities on YouTube by far. There is not really a lot of YouTube communities that get to this level. Honestly, I can't really think of any off the top of my head that are as cohesive and as great a group as the Elite Spring Army. And so I've got to say, hands down, the best community. And obviously I'm a little biased because, you know, it's the Elite Spring Army. It's my community. But still, I think it's great and I love it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, if you agree with Sean, make sure to put an LSA in the live chat, because I would say that it is the best community out there. And with that, we are on to the final one of the segment before we get on to the freezing cold news.
All right, and next up, we have a $20 super chat from Rodsma, who says, presumed mobilization of 500,000 in Russia mid-January at 700 KIA and 1,400 wounded / prisoner, etc. / per day means 238 days, give or take, to consume next mobilization wave.
And thank you so much for the support. And that is true. And thank you so much for adding that in. We think that there's going to be another partial mobilization coming up soon. And I've got to say this, not to toot my whistle or anything, but I did end up becoming correct on that. Remember, Matthew, I said they're going to not engage in major offensive activities through the winter months in between November and December because they don't want to call up another partial mobilization so quickly. They want to make it look like they're doing somewhat okay, so they're going to largely freeze their lines and wait until January to call up another one. And now we see that they're getting very close to doing that again.
I vaguely remember something about that.
And so we're seeing it happen. I wish I could pull up that kind of stuff. I wish I actually had that stuff earmarked for the future so that way I could go back and show that, because once again, that was a correct assumption. And we're about to see that that's happening soon, because there's talks right now in Russia, like there was around the first mobilization, that once again, they're going to be doing another one. And usually, the first time that came around, it was correct, so we're assuming that this time it will also be correct again. If they mobilize another 500,000 reservists, the problem is that they haven't ever been able to fully utilize the original 300,000. So the secondary 500,000 we'll be seeing getting conscripted now, they're going to be even less effective. They're going to be having practically no training. There's going to be no small arms to issue to them because the Russians have nearly run out of usable ones. There's going to be almost no ammunition. There's going to be really nothing. I mean, right now, we still see that a lot of the mobics, as they've been called, are still inside of Russia, inside of tent camps, because the Russians either lack the ability to send them to the front, or they lack the supplies to field them properly to send them to the front. So I don't know what they're going to do with an additional 500,000 of them, but it's not going to be much. And also, they will, once again, the casualties right now, as we see, they'll be chewing through them fairly quickly. To think that 500,000 guys can be chewed through in less than a year is actually something very interesting to think about. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and providing that information to us, and I hope we addressed that comment fairly well. And with that, it's now time for us to move on into the news again, and this time into the Svatove area, where we saw some frozen trenches and the Russians showing us the poor conditions that they're living in. Not surprising again.
Вот такие наши замечательные позиции, подготовленные, по мнению нашего командования. Мы тут должны, блядь, жить, нахуй. Нет, тонуть. 10 января. Да-да, 2023.
Was that guy picking a booger?
10 января.
He is. Ew.
Oh, that's nasty as
With
hell.
a glove.
2023 года. 392-й мотострелковый полк, 3-й батальон, 10-я рота. Изначально наше командование предлагало нам переехать на готовые позиции. На минуточку, сейчас на улице мороз минус 20. Нам предлагают жить вот здесь, во льду. Вот, при этом наше начальство нас шантажирует, не дает возможности в медобслуживании и в обеспечении, пока мы не переедем на данные позиции. Данное видеообращение мы предлагаем рассмотреть военной прокуратуре, ФСБ, вот, лично Владимиру Владимировичу Путину. Считаем, что данные действия командования подрывают боеспособность нашей армии. Минус 20 мороз. Ребята здесь просто померзнут, заболеют. С кем, кто будет воевать вообще? Мы не успеем даже повоевать ни с кем. Изначально, когда мы сюда приехали в зону СВО, нам говорили о том, что мы переедем на оборудованные позиции, и вот как они оборудованы. Командование сообщает о том, что средства закончились. Более того, они не стесняются в выражениях, в лоб нам говорят о том, что деньги просто своровали. И сейчас от нас требуют переехать сюда. На минуточку, изначально мы оборудовали все сами, в другой лесополосе. Мы покупали все на свои деньги. Буржуйки, крыши делали, копали все сами, лопаты, все свое. Ничего нам не было предоставлено. Периодически происходит сбой с водой, с обеспечением. Командование не стесняется в выражениях, просто нас шантажирует. Мы просим придать огласки, чтобы обратила внимание общественность, СМИ, ну и, соответственно, соответствующие силовые структуры. Ребят, здесь просто наша рота и поляжет, не успев встретиться с врагом.
Good lord, this guy went on forever. Also, someone was gracious enough, I believe it was actually Paula McDonald, to provide a summary of what he was pretty much saying. He's talking about the poor trench conditions, and not only that, the lack of supplies that they were now facing in this area of the front lines as well, and pretty much saying that the Russian army is not really taking care of them at all. That's why he said our army in the middle of it, which is Nasha army. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the video. And once again, fairly interesting to see that the Russians are still complaining about a lack of supplies in the Svatove area. and that they were too stupid to not expect that water sitting at the bottom of a trench would freeze in cold weather. That seems to me like something you would just know. Like, you know, like knowing that the sky is blue. You know, like if you have cold water at the bottom of something and it's not really going anywhere, it's going to freeze. I don't know. Maybe I'm setting a high standard or something. I don't really know. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and we're now going to be moving out of the northeastern area in general. Once again, not a lot of frontline activity happening here, but we will be keeping up to date with this as much as possible and seeing if anything does happen. Moving on down from Svitove and on towards Kremenna, we also saw a Ukrainian Mi-8 firing off its rockets today in a salvo against the Russians while being cheered on by the ground soldiers. When you see it firing off its rockets, when you hear them cheering as the helicopter flies on over, popping their flares.
Oh.
Well, this guy's got bronchitis. You hear the second helicopter coming up. It's an Mi-24 this time. That man just yelled out a full Oppa. You know things have gotten serious when he says that. Oppa!
The helicopters are pretty menacing looking.
Yeah, I gotta say this once again. We rat on the Soviets a lot, and the Mi-24, when you really look at it, it's performance-wise not really that impressive compared to the Western counterparts, even when it was made. But I will tell you this. One thing that the Soviets got down on this design was the sleek look of this thing. The Mi-24s just always look menacing. I would say, really, the Mi-24 invokes more fear in people than either the Ka-52 or the Mi-28 when they see one, even though this thing technically is inferior to them and obsolete. But I gotta say, these things look cool. And also I love the blue and yellow that they paint on the front of every single Mi-24 in that large, long line. It's just a cool look. And I honestly think, Matthew, it'd be really cool if they made a model of one of these, like a Ukrainian Mi-24 with the right paint job and everything on it.
I'm sure it's out there if you look hard enough.
I'm sure it is.
Loud.
Yeah, that was loud.
Це їм дали піздулей. Ще там час на фоні їбане нахуй. Не, вони їх.
I see them looking around.
Це було б охуєнно, блядь.
At this moment, that why the helicopters are supporting them with rocket fires, because Ukrainian forces are still slowly advancing onto the town of Kremenna. The speed has not been as fast as I was expecting. We can see here over the past 24 hours, they've only moved a little bit. So we don't really know what the delay is here with the Ukrainians, but the idea, at least right now, is that there is some kind of a forward momentum behind the Ukrainian forces where they are starting to push towards Kremenna, and that's why we see that the helicopters are supporting them with rocket fire in that area. With that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Kremenna region and further on down the front line and into Bakhmut, where, oh my, as you can tell, all of the news has been happening here for the past week. If you look at the entire front line, there's almost no news anywhere but in Bakhmut. And of course, there is a lot going on in this area, a lot of casualties for the Russians, a decent amount of defensive operations being pulled off by the Ukrainians that are largely successful. And so with that, here's the video of a Russian soldier freezing in the snow. This is what a lot of y'all have been waiting for all night long. This is what the thumbnail and the title was about, and it turns out to be true. Russian soldiers have gotten so cold, lack winter gear, and also any form of heating, that they're now just sitting there and succumbing to hypothermia. Here's a video of it. Now, this is something that, when you think about it, it's actually somewhat unfortunate, even for a Russian. But the second thing is that if this guy is dying from exposure, and he looks somewhat clothed, even compared to a normal Russian that we've been seeing at this point in the year, how many others are dying from exposure? Because this guy, you know, if you look at him, he's well on his way to the other side, but I mean, like, dang, there's a lot of them, Matthew, that we've seen on video just over the past few days that are less clothed than that guy, and he's out there getting exposure and succumbing to it. How many other Russians are getting exposure and succumbing to that?
A bunch.
A
whole
lot.
Bunch.
Well, like, that's one thing that they're probably not even able to account for in the casualty numbers, is how many Russians are succumbing to the cold. We have really no idea. We saw that one guy But there's got to be a lot more out there, because he's not the only one. As we move further south, you'll see that these videos are reoccurring across all parts of the front, the right, center, and left. So with that, we're moving on to the next clip from inside of Soledar, where we also saw the battles still raging on today, although we do have enough information to know that the Ukrainians did withdraw from Soledar today, considering that their rear was about to be encircled and they're about to be trapped there. But here's one of the last videos of the Ukrainians fighting inside of the town. And that music hit like a bus. And you see the Ukrainians moving through the fence work, and now out into some kind of a thicket. They're now moving through the thicket. Not the thicket, the thicket. Effing thicket. That's what you said. That's what you do when you mix them together. You say a thicket. See them continuing to move on. The camera, it appears to be attached to his chest, so we're not getting that great of a view, but you can see that the incredibly cold weather is everywhere, of course, and you can see it in this video even today in Soledar. You see them continuing to move on. And you'll notice something about these Ukrainian soldiers that you'll also not see a lot in Russian videos. These soldiers are a lot more mobile and move quicker. This is a big difference in between the Russians because onsets of early hypothermia include some sluggishness. And so if you see Russian forces moving slowly, that may be an indication of the onset of hypothermia.
It could also be due to the fact that they're very hungry as well.
Yes, very hungry, very cold, and those kinds of conditions do not make a great fighting soldier. So with that, that's the end of this clip, and we can see that, once again, the Ukrainians are still carrying on, at least at this moment, the battle in Soledar, now withdrawn, and they are faring the cold a lot better than their Russian counterparts on film. With that, we're now moving on all the way to the rear line, where we also saw a wounded actor giving a message. Now, real quick, to give the acumen of this guy, his name is Dmitro Lenartovich. And real quick, to show y'all who this guy is and what he's really been doing. No, we do not want an emoji in the search bar. We want this. Let's see what movies Dmitro Lenartovich has been in. So, when you see here, the movies have actually gotten pretty good ratings. He hasn't been in a lot of them. He's only been in 4... Wait, actually, he's been in a decent amount of them. Never mind. He's been in a lot of Ukrainian movies. And of course, that's to be expected. He is Ukrainian, so obviously he would be in the Ukrainian film industry. So it appears that he's a pretty seasoned actor, but is this guy really big? It appears that he does not have a Wikipedia page. So, and of course, that's usually the mark of, have you really made it? Do you have a Wikipedia page? So he's not that large, but he is large enough to have been in a decent amount of movies and have quite a record of films behind him. And today he got wounded in the Soledar area, and as he was being carried off the line and put inside of an ambulance to be brought back to a hospital, probably to get some medical care, well, obviously to get medical care, he delivered this message on film. And so, here's the video.
Вітаю, друзі! Я український актор Дмитро Lenartovich, військовослужбовець десантно-штурмових військ в Соледарі 300-й. Пам'ятайте, що ми на Богом даній землі. Нас ніколи не зламати. Ми перемагаємо. Слава Україні!
Dedication right there.
And Slava Ukraini for sure, and Heroism Slava. And this guy right here, now if this doesn't inspire one, I don't know what will. This guy's been wounded. Apparently, he may have even, we're not gonna guess for the worst here, but he's had some kind of a laceration right above his eye, or he's actually gotten his eye blown out or something similar. And this guy is probably sitting inside this ambulance in some pretty decent pain, or he's been drugged up a little bit with morphine to be able to tolerate it. And while he's sitting here in this ambulance, wounded, he asks someone for a phone so that way he can tell people to continue on the fight. This is the kind of thing that you would hear in history, Matthew, like Lord Horatio Nelson, who was shot in the neck at the Battle of Trafalgar by a musket from a Spanish ship. And as he fell on the deck, he told the commanders of the Navy, pretty much as he was passing, to continue to fight and to keep it going. And in the end, The British, although Horatio Nelson would die from his fatal wound below the main deck inside of the gun decks from that musket ball that he caught, the British would go on to win the Battle of Trafalgar decisively, capturing many Spanish and French ships and also destroying a decent amount of the French and Spanish navies. This guy right here, while he was not fatally wounded, luckily, he's got a very similar spirit to Lord Horatio Nelson of the British fleet, and I've got to say, you've got to give someone a lot of credit and admiration for doing something like this when they could just sit there and just try and deal with the wound. Instead, they used the moment to try and rally and inspire the rest of the men who are still fighting at the front. And, of course, many people have been in worse situations than him. And a lot of guys are up there still perfectly fine without a scratch. And I'm sure that he's inspired every single one of them to keep the fight going in the Soledar area and to keep Ukraine on the eventual path to victory. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from this very inspiring video. Quite a man and quite a hero. I think, if anything, that's going to really blow up his acting career after the war for being known for this message. And hopefully it gets spread across all of Ukraine to show that even the wounded soldiers of Ukraine still believe in the cause. With that, we're going to be moving on from the news of the area of Soledar and moving on down towards the area of Pitorodne and Krasnoora, where we saw the Ukrainians doing some trench clearing in Bakhmut. Now, this is something I would like to go over real quick, and a wordage that I actually found very interesting, because I've heard this for quite some while, but never actually knew what it meant, and we have been talking about this for a while, and I never really knew the term. I bet a lot of y'all have heard about enfilades and defilades, and I don't know if Matthew has.
I haven't.
So an enfilade, and you know how I'm always talking about how Russian trenches are dug in a straight line, so if artillery hits it, it goes down both lengths?
Yes.
That kind of artillery, or I guess you could say that kind of fire, if you were to fire straight down a trench and hit everything from beginning to end, is called enfilade. Defilade is when you're spread out. So you have like the zigzag in the trench, so that way you're not hitting everything at the same time. That's kind of a defilade, in a way, to explain it in trench work terms. And so that's kind of interesting. I actually did not know that term, what it meant, until I pulled it up because I heard it the other day, and I was like, I wonder what that really means.
We did get a warning from Richard Rohde, who said that this video is fairly graphic. You might want to be careful on it.
Well, it is an infrared, so usually we get a free pass with infrared footage. We can see the Russians here getting hit by grenades. We can see a decent amount of them in this dugout here, once again hit by grenade.
What in the...
We now see the Ukrainians getting support by infantry on the side. It looks like they are firing in the enfilade down the trench along most of the line. It appears, however, that the Ukrainians' resistance from the Russian forces in this trench were largely removed already from the grenades that were thrown into the trench earlier on in the gunfight. We now see them firing some RPGs inside of the trench in the dugouts as well. And we're actually going to pause it here because that's getting into real footage, and we definitely don't want to show that part. But from the infrared, y'all could tell, of course, that the trench clearing went fairly well, and the Russians didn't really have a good time of it. I guess you could say that didn't really make their day. Well, I guess you could say it ended their day. Anyways, we're going to be moving on into the center of the front line, around the chicken tender, where we saw that the Ukrainian fire was hitting a tree line today, somewhere a little bit further behind the lines as the Russians were trying to move up to engage the Ukrainian forces. We can see once again the Ukrainian artillery fire is fairly accurate, hitting within the tree line and also the dugouts that the Russians have created within it. Also, I would like to correct something real quick. I did get enfilade correct. One viewer said I got defilade correct, and it's actually the use of cover to mitigate the casualties of one's troops, and that is correct. So I wanted to correct that real quick because it's not actually spreading them out; it's just making sure that they're behind cover. When you see, once again, the Ukrainian artillery still effectively hitting this very specific spot in the tree line with the deadly fire, and hopefully wiping out a decent amount of the Russian forces in this area, making sure that they will not reinforce the frontline positions that the Russians are fighting for right now on the chicken tender and within the industrial areas of eastern Bakhmut. With that, that's the end of the video, and we're going to be moving on into the next bit, a little bit further south, where we can also see the crater marks that the Ukrainians have made, marking the fields outside of Bakhmut, and trying to destroy the Russian forces as best as possible. And from this artillery placement, we can tell where the Russian forces mostly were, and have mostly been taken out. You can also see the faint bits of trench work that the Russians have made in this trench, in this tree line, and you can also see where most of the artillery has landed, which is right around the crossroads of all of these tree lines. This is usually where the Russians congregate. For them, this is pretty much a crossroads to use these tree lines to move forces in and out of different areas and into different directions, and we can see that the Ukrainians have turned this into a practical moonscape, largely obliterating the area and flattening it. With that, we're going to be moving on into the next bit of news around the Bakhmut area. Once again, good to see that they're doing that to the Russians and making sure to remove these vital crossroads and the tree lines for them. And moving into Bakhmut proper, we once again got another update on the city from the man of Bakhmut himself. And so, here's the video, and with that, here we go.
Доброго ранку, Україна.
Oh, looks like we're dealing with some loading issues. Give us just a second, everyone. Hopefully this doesn't lag. Oh. So we're just waiting for a second. And let's see, it's not really fixing itself. Let me see about fixing this real quick. So let's see if that fixes it. Ah, dang, it didn't. Let me speed it up a little. Here we go. All right.
Друзі, по оперативній ситуації на ранок 11 січня в місті Соледарі тривають тяжкі бої. Там окремі будинки навіть переходять по декілька разів із рук в руки. Погодні умови тяжкі, обмороження нижніх верхніх кінцівок. Безкінечні штурми, от ці атаки всі. Ситуація там складна, але наші підрозділи не тільки обороняються, а й контратакують. В Соледарі бої тривають, Соледар тримається. По Бахмуту, в зв'язку з тим, що із Бахмута було перекинуто цих найманців на Соледар, а тут залишилась тільки регулярна армія, чмобіки і всі такі інші. То у нас тут трошки, ну, не то що стихло чи тихіше. Бачите, що робиться. Це самий центр міста. У нас тактика та ж. От ці нові, що ще не шугані, намагаються лізти, їх вибивають, вони лізуть. В общем, кардібалети. По Бахмуту, Бахмут тримається, нормально стоїть, подекуди наші є, не буду говорити, не можна розказувати, пізніше після війни розкажу. У нас є окремі підрозділи, які, ну, блін, я б не хотів би, щоб вони працювали проти мене. Там козаки і вдень, і вночі заходять на позиції до орків, блін, вибивають до коліна, ще й сюди, як баранів, їх тягнуть. Арта, міномети, танчики у нас теж працюють. Дай Боже кожному. БПЛА завдяки волонтерам забезпечується коригування, розвідка. Все воно працює. Але це ж завдяки волонтерам. Коли вже ситуація ця виправиться, не зовсім зрозуміло. Ну, я думаю, виправиться тоді, коли на ключових посадах у нас будуть люди військові, які розуміють потреби. От мені дуже подобається, є такий генерал, який захищав аеропорт Жуляни. Ви знаєте про кого. От я думаю, що він би, мабуть, по-іншому все робив. Друзі, якщо коротко, Бахмут стоїть, Бахмут тримається, Бахмут під контролем Збройних сил. По Бахмуту все зрозуміло.
По Солидару теж зрозуміло. Тяжкі бої тривають, там Юра Бутусов висвітлює ці події. Так що, друзі, тримаємо стрій. Бахмут – це Україна, був, є і буде. Слава нації, смерть ворогам.
Enforcer, I don't think we can hear you.
And so with that, that's the end of the video. Once again, it appears that the situation is a little difficult in the Soledar area as the heavy battles continue, and the Ukrainian forces have largely moved out of the town to avoid encirclement. But beyond that, the Ukrainians are still holding the line in the direct center, and also in the south as well, for the large part beyond the very southern tip of the ridgeline. Well, that we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of news from the Bakhmut area, where we also saw Ukrainian artillery hitting around the area of Bakhmut in the occupied trenches. Actually, that is a repeat of the last video. Apparently, I copied that one twice. So we're going to be moving on from that clip, and now down on into the southern front. In case y'all are wondering why I wasn't talking there for a second while I clicked off the video and everything, I had the microphone muted, and I forgot. So with that, we are moving on into the next clip, where we saw some Ukrainian snipers at work in the Bakhmut area again. And we're going to have to mute it, but here's the clip. You can see the sniper lining up his target, moving his crosshairs around, and we can see the target right there in the distance. You see them moving around. We see him firing, and the first guy goes down. We now see two Russians moving in a field from left to right. You see the sniper putting his crosshairs on the first one, taking him down. We see the second one turn around and start running the opposite direction. And it appears that he may have gotten away. We couldn't really tell for certain, but still, 2 out of 3 is not bad. That's a pretty good success rate, and it's good to see that the Ukrainian snipers are still continuing on, knocking out the Russians the best they can. Well, then we're now moving on into the next bit of location unknown. Well, actually, I'm sorry, southern, left flank news, where we also saw some Spartans from the United Kingdom. These are a form of armored personnel carrier that the British have used before, and we can see one of them here, and they're really neat. We can see it accompanied by a BMP-2 over there in the distance as the video pauses, but with that, that's the end of the clip. And very interesting to see, and very neat to see some of the more basic British support that has eventually arrived and helped out the Ukrainians fairly well in just moving troops around. With that, we're moving on to our last bit of news from the southern, from the left flank of Bakhmut, where we saw another video from the Wagner unit! Oh, actually, I'm sorry, correction, the Chechens. I think I wrote that up wrong. It's actually the Chechens. And these guys are freezing cold, literally shivering and like doing like the rickety thing with their teeth. I forgot what that's called. Chattering? I don't know. But anyways, here's the clip.
It is a cold down.
Come on, Don.
A very cold down. I did not have fun out here.
And this guy's helmet's so small it doesn't even cover his head. It just sits on top of it like a Laurel and Hardy hat. And that's the end of the clip. But you can see that the Chechens once again showed up, and they're freezing cold. Oh, poor guy. I'm sure.
Whoa, what happened to all that thug talk, Don?
What happened to all that bravery, Don? I thought they could handle anything, Don. Now a slight breeze get them killed, Don.
Now they went from oh Don to oh boy, it's so cold.
Oh gee, man, I don't think I can handle the cold. But anyways, with that, we're gonna be moving on from this clip. Honestly, it's good to see the Chechens freezing. If anyone needs to freeze, it's these guys. I've seen so much about them that y'all haven't seen, and someone's about to say, here he goes, once again talking about what he's not showing us. Listen, if I could show it to y'all, I would. But I can't, because YouTube. But these guys are something else. I would say they're like the Russian equivalent of the Einsatz group. And with that, we're moving on from the left flank news in Bakhmut. And once again, the situation is looking as reported before. heavy battles in Soledar. It appears that the Russians may have actually taken Soledar today. Bakhmut in the south are largely holding. We're now going to be moving on past the Donetsk area. Once again, not a lot of news occurring in this area. It appears that the front lines are stagnant as far as video footage goes, and also in frontline movements as well. And so nothing to report from Donetsk. But as we move down to the Volodar, Pavlivka, and Mykolaisk area, we did see that the Ukrainians were returning some Russian fire here. We're going to have to mute it, but you can see the machine gun fire here coming from this area in the village. And now we see the video pausing again. We see the machine gun fire continuing to come from the specific machine gun nest. It appears to be about right here from the muzzle flash, which we can see on screen. And we can now see small little explosions going throughout the entire village. And now we can see that the machine gun nest just got hit directly by an artillery shell. And another one. We now see some Ukrainian fire coming in. And more artillery hitting the machine gun nest. And more artillery hitting the machine gun nest. They are making sure that thing is out cold.
That's the Ukrainians shooting the tracers?
Yes, that's the Ukrainians shooting the tracers into the village and also taking out the machine gun nest. Man, that was actually some pretty good work on their end. That was pinpoint accurate onto that machine gun and wiped it out. And also, it looks like they may have been engaging some Russian forces that were inside of the houses here at the western or the left side of the village. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip into the second clip we've got, somewhere around Pavlivka, where we saw some Ukrainians saving the wounded. So we're going to have to mute it, but we can see this little armored personnel carrier. It appears to be an M113 racing through the town at a very high speed. You see that almost the entirety of it has been destroyed. We now see some smoke rising off of one of the buildings. Now see the M113 rolling up. It's clearly marked with a red cross as a medical vehicle. And as I remember, if any vehicle is marked with a red cross like that, is a war crime to destroy it. We now see them taking the wounded and throwing them well, not throwing them, but putting them inside of the M113. When you see them passing them on into a crew inside of the vehicle. We now see the M113 immediately racing off at high speed to get the wounded man out of there. And I gotta say, this medevac was conducted incredibly well. Not only was it swift, and they got the man in there immediately, but they're out of there as soon as they got in. There will be no time at all, even if the Russians wanted to destroy the vehicle, to get it, because it's moving so quickly, and by the time they finally get this, I guess the coordinates to their artillery and fire off the first round, this thing's out of there. Also, I didn't realize that an M113 could scoot like that. That thing is going.
Top gear.
Tonight on Top Gear. Oh, there's the artillery. Looks like they were able to try and call some in right on its exit. But still, that little thing's a scooter. The driver of that thing is pretty good. I mean, like, to drive this thing this quickly, with how little control he really has over that vehicle, is quite impressive, I'd have to say. But with that, we're now moving on from this little bit of news and on into our next bit, further down from the Pavlivka and Volodar area, and we're now moving down to Kharkiv, where we saw a Ka-52 got shot down today.
Так. Ось залишки від славетного російського незбиваємого К-52. Ось бронескло. Це хлопці сюди вже його перевезли. Ось що від нього залишилось. Ось. Лопаті композитні. На інших вони алюмінієві. А тут композитні. Ось його залишки. Все. Редуктор. І таке всяке. І таке всяке. От і їхній К-52, який назавжди залишився з екіпажем на теренах Херсонщини. Слава Україні! Слава ЗСУ!
These pieces of rubble are actually quite expensive, if y'all didn't know. And I guess you could call it a KIA-52, Matthew. Oh, and I also like to give credit to Chris Kohler for coming up with that one. That was a really smart one. I had to use it. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from this destroy KA-52. Great to see, because the Russians only have about 106 of them, and from what we know, about 60 of them have been destroyed. Estimate. So that one's about one of the probably in the 60s or the late 50s in number. With that, we're going to be moving over to Vasilivka, where we saw something else interesting. This is the first T-90S that's ever been captured intact. Not the destroyed ones. We've seen 2 of those. This is the first one captured intact. And it is raw proof that the Russians are now using the Indian export variants of the T-90 in their war in Ukraine because of their lack of armored vehicles. And so with that, here's the video. You can see it right there. Front to back. And a middle finger. Oh.
Oh.
But they got it. And that is another T-90S confirmed, destroyed or captured by the Ukrainians, and showing that the Russians have been running out of armor this entire time. With that, we've actually covered all of the news from around the world and inside of Ukraine. And so now it's time for us to go to the one, the only, President Volodymyr Zelensky and his speech from Ukraine. And so here's President Zelensky on day 323 of the war in Ukraine.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні тут, у Львові, для України прозвучали важливі новини під час саміту Люблінського трикутника, нашого спеціального формату з Польщею і Литвою. Польща ухвалила рішення по передачі Україні танків. Я дякую за це. Дякую президенту Дуді, уряду Польщі, усім нашим польським друзям. Литва передає нашій державі зенітні системи, ту зброю, якою ми потребуємо для захисту від іранських дронів, для захисту нашої енергетики. Дякую Гітанасу за цей черговий прояв незмінної і принципової підтримки України, яка почала ще до 24 лютого і триватиме до нашої перемоги. Почув сьогодні цю впевненість ще раз і від Анджея, і від Гітанаса. Ми разом пройдемо шлях до відновлення безпеки України і всієї Європи, до відновлення нашої територіальної цілісності, до відновлення миру. Російська агресія має програти, і так і буде. Дуже змістовно сьогодні проговорили питання нашої інтеграції, як до Євросоюзу, так і до НАТО. Вже цього року ми маємо вийти на відчутний прогрес в європейській інтеграції. Це стосується передусім початку переговорів щодо членства. Польща і Литва однаково і всебічно готові нас підтримувати. Бачать нас повністю інтегрованими до європейських і євроатлантичних структур. І разом з іншими нашими партнерами на континенті та в Альянсі ми маємо трансформувати цю готовність, цю енергію в реальний інституційний рух, в реальні рішення. Звичайно, ми сьогодні говорили і про ситуацію на полі бою, про те, зокрема, що російська агресія вичерпається тільки тоді, коли російські амбіції не матимуть жодної іншої альтернативи, окрім програшу. Всі російські амбіції і на фронті, і в політиці, в економіці, в юридичній площині. Зараз держави-терористи і пропагандисти намагаються зробити вигляд, нібито якась частина нашого міста Соледару майже повністю зруйнована окупантами міста, ніби це якийсь здобуток Росії. Вони будуть подавати і вже подають це своєму суспільству так, щоб підтримувати мобілізацію, щоб давати надію тим, хто за агресію. Але бої продовжуються, Донецький напрямок тримається, і ми без перерви навіть на один день робимо все, щоб посилити українську оборону. Наш потенціал зростає. Я дякую всім нашим партнерам, які допомагають у цьому. Танки західного зразка – це робота всієї нашої антивоєнної коаліції. І це новий рівень нашого потенціалу. Сьогодні ж у Львові провів нараду щодо безпекової ситуації в наших західних областях та на нашому державному кордоні. Враховуємо всі загрози, посилюємо всі елементи безпеки наших регіонів. Слава усім, хто воює за Україну. Я дякую усім, хто працює на нашу перемогу. Дякую усім, хто допомагає нам у відновленні безпеки. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 323 of the war in Ukraine. And that wraps up the last day of this week of news. Tomorrow will begin a brand new week according to how the Ukraine war calendar starts. The first day of every week begins on Thursday, which was the actual day that the war began almost 323 days ago right now. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching. I hope you all been enjoying this news, and I hope you all found something interesting about tonight's news and you found what you were looking for. I hope we didn't disappoint with the title. You know, I hope that we actually showed the news y'all were looking for. But with that, I hope y'all did enjoy. And if y'all did, make sure to subscribe, because if you are new to this channel, we run this channel every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. We take Mondays off, but every other day, you can count on us to be here on this channel, covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine and everything we can find. Not only that, but on Sundays, you can also always count on us to run a Sunday fundraiser. We have never missed a single Sunday of fundraising over the course of the entire war. This channel has been able to raise nearly $750,000 in support of Ukraine, give or take about $10,000. But still, maybe this next fundraiser we'll be able to get to $750,000, because I think we're really close. I'll have to go back and do the math, but I think we are just on the cusp of $750,000, $750,000. But with that, we are going to be moving on into the polls and the question segment. And thank you all so much once again for watching so far. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So for our final question segment tonight, we have 3 more polls to address. And the very first one says, do you think Russia is already secretly planning the next major mobilization behind the scenes? This is maybe one of the highest numbers of majority we have here on the stream. 94% said yes, they are already scheming it. 3% said unsure, 1% said unlikely, and 1% said no. So very clearly, pretty much everybody believes that Russia is already scheming a mobilization. And I would have to agree with that. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, I'd certainly say they're scheming a mobilization. They've been doing that the entire time. I would say that it's most likely going to occur soon. If it does occur in mid-January, it would be at the exact time we expected it to. And if it doesn't, I'll be actually taken a little bit by surprise. It most likely will occur in February at that point, but I'm assuming that it'll be very soon, probably mid-January, probably within the next 2 weeks. So with that, I hope that answers that poll fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And the next poll says, how would you primarily describe the Mi-24 helicopter? The most popular option, which has 44%, said menacing and aggressive, 25% said ugly and unattractive, 23% said robust and durable, and 9% said impressive and well-designed. So it's on the border for me between ugly and unattractive and menacing. It's menacing, but in like kind of like an ugly way, I think. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it definitely looks robust. So sadly, I couldn't put a 5th option, but I'll say a combination between the 4. So Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's not impressive by any means. It is robust looking, though. I will say that for certain. I don't think it's ugly. I actually think it's not that bad looking of a helicopter. But there are better ones out there in the world. Like, obviously, I think everyone knows that the AH-64, not 56, that's the Cheyenne. The AH-64 Apache is probably the #1 helicopter in the world in terms of its looks. I think it's probably one of the best out there, if there was one. Because just look at the thing. It's nice looking. You can't deny that.
The Apache.
Apache. Or I've heard
Apache.
I actually have a friend who calls it the Apache. And I've never heard it
Who's
called
that?
well, I can't say, but I've never heard it called the Apache. I've always heard it called the Apache, but maybe we're wrong. Maybe it is the Apache. I don't know. Interestingly enough, I'll tell y'all the story. I thought this was a funny one to tell y'all. I was at college today, and as you all know, I'm a big gun guy, and so I once owned a couple of M1 rifles, M1 battle rifles. And if y'all know the guy who made it, the usual name for it is his last name, M1Garand. And I said that I owned a couple of them in this class, and I said they were M1 Garands. And so after the class, this girl, she was pretty cool. She was actually a pretty nice person. She walked up and she was like, I wanted to correct you. It's actually Garand. And I was like, oh. It's like,
she's right.
And wait, she's right?
Yeah, it's Garand.
It's not. It's Garand.
It's Garand, I guarantee you. It's got to be Garand.
Well, you know what? Actually, we're going to call up on a very trusted person here on YouTube, Ian McCollum from Forgotten Weapons. You've watched this channel, right, Matthew?
I actually never have.
Well,
How about Hickok? Can we get him to say it?
Hickok 45 here. We're going to pronounce Garand today. Is it Garand or Garand? But let me go real quick to how to pronounce Garand, and I'll show you. It's a very short video, but I think this is very informational to many. Also, a huge shout out to Forgotten Weapons. He has 2.48 million subscribers, so he doesn't really need a shout out. If anything, we need one, but still shout out to him. He makes great videos and very interesting content on firearms. But with that, here's a video.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another Forgotten Weapons short. I'm Ian McCollum, and according to General Patton, this was the greatest battle implement ever devised as of 1945. The U.S. rifle caliber 30 M1, generally known by the name of its inventor, a Canadian-American expat, worked at Springfield Armory for many decades by the name of John Cantius, G-A-R-A-N-D. Typically in the United States, you will hear this referred to as a Garand. However, I always refer to it as a Garand, and there's a reason for that. Questions come up as to how are you supposed to pronounce this guy's name? And I have the perfect answer. I have here a printout of a little piece that appeared in one of the columns of American Rifleman magazine in 1943. This was written to the editor, and it says, "Editor, as requested, I enclose a copy of a letter from the G&C Merriam Company, publishers of the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, explaining my own name, my own preference as to the pronunciation of my name, John C. Garand, Springfield, Massachusetts." And the section of the letter he has enclosed says, an initial G hard, as in go, first A short, as in Harry, second A somewhat more obscure, as in errand, accent on the first syllable, or according to the Merriam-Webster system of marketing, Garand. So that is how you are, well, that is how John Cantius Garand himself pronounced his name. Garand, that's the way I have chosen to pronounce the name of his rifle. It's not the one that's in most common use in the US, but I think it's appropriate to call it the same way he called himself and his rifle himself. So anyway, that's it for today.
And that's the answer. It's Garand.
Huh.
It's official. This is literally a letter from John Garand saying my last name is pronounced Garand. It's not Garand. And everyone in America has been saying it wrong this entire time. And this man, this poor French Canadian guy who ended up designing probably one of the most influential rifles in U.S. military history has been consigned to being called Garand his entire life. You know, I wonder if Garand is spinning in his grave, considering that he actually wrote a letter to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary to correct how it's pronounced. I wonder if he's spinning in his grave, considering how many people call it a Garand and not a Garand. But this was something that she talked about, and then after that, we actually watched this video, her and me, and I was like, oh, and she's like, I'm still going to say Garand, because that's how I've always said it, and, you know, it's like, no big deal at the end of the day, it's not really like anyone's going to go to blows over that, and then we just talk guns, but it was pretty cool, and I thought that was kind of funny. Speaking of, like, the whole thing of, what in the world was the poll about even? Like, I knew there was, like, a roundabout thing I'm trying to say here, but can you reread the poll again?
Let's see. Let me go find that poll again real quick. How would you describe the Mi-24 helicopter?
So, I don't even know how the
How'd you get on this?
I don't even know how. I don't really know how. There was if we rewound the stream, there was a reason why I went to that, but I've totally forgotten now. So with that, we're moving on to the next one. But it is robust. I will say that. So anyways, with that, we were on to the next one. I'm really, honestly, I'm now at a complete loss as to why I brought up that story. Like, now I'm even wondering, like, why did I bring that up? Because I can't even remember how in the world I got to that. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
So, somebody just said in the live chat. I wonder if I should even repeat it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. He said, robust and ugly like I like my women.
Oh my God. Why'd you read it? Why? Why would you read that? Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Jeez. What the hell, Matthew? You know you're supposed to read that stuff. Why? Wait a minute, Matthew. Now that I've said you're not supposed to read that stuff, someone's gonna go, "Oh, he's suppressing free speech." Oh, anyways, let's get on to the next one.
All right. So the next poll says Sergei Surovikin, commander of Ukraine invasion force, was removed from post. Is that status quo for Russia? 78% said yes, totally normal for Russia. 9% said unsure, undecided, and 13% said no, it could be a big shakeup. Now, I think this is the second one that they've eliminated. I think, maybe. I think it's totally normal for Russia. Nothing like a big shakeup, I would say, because Putin is the big daddy at the top, and with him there, it's going to all stay the same. It doesn't matter who gets replaced. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say status quo. I mean, like, we've watched this happen like what, 10 times now? Like once a month? It's not that
Yeah,
wild.
it's happening quite frequently now.
Yeah, you know, they brought in the guy. Remember back in the day, Matthew, when they changed it out to that big guy, and then we found out it wasn't really the big guy, and then they changed it out to the Butcher of Syria, and then the Butcher of Syria got his own men butchered in Ukraine, and then he got removed and replaced with someone. This isn't new. This is what they've been doing the entire war, and it really shows that there's a lot of problems in the Russian military, because usually you want to have the same commander in charge of things from beginning to end if possible, and that also shows that they're confident in their command and they're doing what's expected. You'll see that when Dwight D. Eisenhower was appointed the Supreme Allied Commander of the Allied Armed Forces in the Western Front, and also General Douglas MacArthur in the Pacific Front, they would end up pretty much serving duration in those positions until the war was over. And that showed that they were doing a fairly good job, and they were meeting the, I guess you could say, the government's expectations for progress, and also the military's expectations for progress as well in terms of how the war was going. We haven't seen that a lot on the Ukrainian side. It appears that a lot of the Ukrainian generals have been doing so well that none of them have really been removed, except for the original two generals in charge in the Kherson area. They got removed for treason. But beyond them, everyone else, like General Bars, who we've really given a lot of praise on this channel, he's still in charge of Ukrainian forces right now somewhere in the Svatove area. He was actually in charge of the defense of Kyiv, and not only that, the counteroffensive that occurred in the Kharkiv area, which reclaimed everything from Balaklia to Svatove. So he's done fairly well, and he's never been removed from his position. We haven't really heard of any Ukrainian generals beyond that that have been removed from their positions as well. So if the Ukrainians did it, it would be well out of the norm and showing that something's going very wrong or that general is incredibly incompetent. For the Russians, this is fairly normal. It's just showing the normal string of incompetence, and you're going to find the next incompetent fool to take the position, and then he'll also screw everything over again. So with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well. And with that, let's get on into the questions.
All right, so moving on into our super chat questions. Up first, we have a $20 super chat from Psyops, who says, News 24 here. He says, with breaking new information, enforcer does something to a duck at a park. I'm paraphrasing that. Now to Matt to confirm the horrible allegation.
Matthew, you hold all the power over me right now. You could have me canceled. Dude, what do you pick?
I have to neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, dang. That's brutal.
That's like a no answer.
Oh, man. I plead the fifth. And then nowadays people go, well, pleading the fifth is pretty much pleading guilt. It's like, wasn't that the whole point? Yeah, but that's my thing. You know, people say that, though, Matthew. And it's like, isn't the whole point of the Fifth Amendment to just not make an answer? You know, like, that's the point of the Fifth Amendment.
I'm not sure if you can or can't make an inference of guilt from that in court, but I'm a little uncertain about that. I think I've heard some people say both answers. I'm not really sure which one's accurate.
Yeah, but I think it's stupid, though, to say that implying the fifth means you're guilty because you're not willing to answer the question, because that's the whole reason the fifth is there. You know, it's like did you kill this man? I plead the fifth. We can't really get anything out of it.
Although the fifth does mean that you believe the information will incriminate yourself, so that you might be able to draw some kind of negative inference from that.
Yeah, but still, that's not really the point of the fifth, you know? Like, the fifth is supposed to be able to make sure that you don't incriminate yourself. But then, in the process of making sure that you don't incriminate yourself, everyone pretty much says that you've now incriminated yourself. You know, it's kind of like self-defeating in that purpose, if you view it that way.
True that.
But anyways, let's get back to the question, and can you reread it again?
Oh, that one from PsyOps?
Oh, wait a minute, no. Okay, now I remember this duck thing. I thank you for the support, PsyOps. We did not do anything to... let me pull a Bill Clinton here. I did not have sexual relations with that goose. Or a David Cameron. I did not have sexual relations with that pig. Oh, God. I just remember that whole thing, Matthew. Remember? Whoa. And also, I just remember that whole thing, Matthew. Do you remember it, like, with David Cameron, one of the former prime ministers, and the pig?
Nah, I don't remember anything about that. What do you mean with the pig?
I'm sure a lot of my British viewers will know what I'm talking about, because I think that just made the rounds for everyone over there. David Cameron was a little fun of that pig in that picture, but with that, we're on to the next one.
Huh. Can we see an image?
No. On to the next.
Well, anyways, up next we have a $50 super chat from Hellpug, who does not leave a comment. But Hellpug, that is very generous of you, and thank you for helping to keep the channel running, because it does help you keep the lights on. But Enforcer obviously wants to say a few words.
Oh,
so
I do. I'm chomping at the bits. But anyways, thank you so much for the support, Hellpug. That is a incredible amount of support, and I thank you so much for helping out this channel so much, because without that kind of support, the lights aren't able, like Matthew was saying, to be kept on back here. I'm not able to live. And so I gotta thank you so much for it, because you're helping us to keep alive back here, so that way we can keep doing this as a full-time job. This takes doing this channel, like I don't mention this a lot anymore on stream, but doing this channel and just running the stream is a 60-hour-a-week job most of the time. Sometimes I can cut that down a little bit, and if you ever see any special effects or anything extra being added, usually my time is added on by a couple of hours every week. But it takes 60 hours a week to run this thing, and I got to thank you so much for the support, because while you didn't leave a comment, that support will help me to keep pumping in all the hours I'm constantly pumping into this thing to make sure that these streams and this news is able to come out on a day-to-day basis every single 24-hour period. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Hellbug. I know you didn't throw in a comment, but I hope that does address the support fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, Hellpug, are those two solo cups on top of your dog's head, like for Hellpug? Like, I'm trying to figure out what this profile picture is here. It looks like
they look like candles,
either candles or bologna. Like, what do they call it? Bologna cylinder? Or, I don't know what to call that. A cylinder of bologna. A cylinder of bologna.
Like a bologna slice?
No, not a slice. That's a chunk.
Yeah, but a thick one, a thick slice. Like you don't have to make a slice paper thin. It can be thick.
Yeah, it's thick.
Man, that thing thick. Man. wait, hang on, man. Yeah, I'm telling you something. You're bringing around the whole dump truck up in the sheer thing. I'm telling you that.
Whoa.
Yeah, but anyway, whoa. Hey, man, listen, you were calling out some weird joke earlier on. Anyway, so we're on to the next one.
All right. So up next, we have a $20 super chat from PsyOps once again, who says, let's see here. Man, PsyOps is always pushing the envelope. Let me read this in my head real quick, because I know it means something else. Okay, so PsyOps, this is going to have to get administrative review here. I'm going to send this over to the Enforcer to read, and make sure you think with your dirty side of your mind. You have it in your inbox.
Yeah, I'm reading it. Let's see. Oh. PsyOps, why? Like, you send in support and then you make me feel bad because I can't read them. I do thank you for the support and thank you so much in helping us to run this channel, but I can't read that off because it's a little too out there. Like, it's a little too straightforward, really, in its innuendo. But I do thank you for the support, PsyOps, and helping this channel to keep on running. And sadly, we cannot read that off. But the people who did see that super chat come in, I'm sure they did read it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling.
Yes, indeed. And I sure wish that when I type that my mouse would not jump around the screen like a maniac. Could it catch up? It's like my screen's lagging.
Come on, man.
Yeah, come on, man. I mean, what's going on, man? Are you on cocaine or something? But anyways, yes. And T. Hansen said, no permafrost in Ukraine. It's too far south. That is true, T. Hanshin. That is true. And sadly, we're from Alabama. We don't know about the winters. But anyways, up next we have a $20 super chat from Hal Rose, who says, Enforcer, as the #1 fan of NATO, U.S. should lend nukes to NATO to store in selected host countries. Put teeth in MAD.
Mad's already got teeth. The missiles...
Could you lend me a nuke?
you have the wolf from the Three Little Pigs, that Disney cartoon. What was it? What was the one he came up with? Wait, he was the sheep in the basket. I'm just a little sheep. Would one give me a thermonuclear weapon?
Yes.
I don't think we should be handing out nukes because we can't really get them back once we give them to them. Unless if they're under U.S. control. If we just gave nukes to countries in NATO, I don't really like the idea of that. I want to try and limit the countries that have nuclear weapons as much as possible and limit the number of nuclear weapons the countries that do possess nuclear weapons have to a smaller amount. So I wouldn't like that idea. And also, mutually assured destruction already has teeth. Our intercontinental ballistic missiles can cross over the Arctic Circle and directly into Russia, destroying it completely without a submarine or any other kind of vehicle, such as a bomber, having to be used to deliver those nuclear weapons. So mutually assured destruction already does have teeth, and it would have to, considering that was what made us survive the Cold War for the large part without getting nuked by the Soviet Union, is that they knew the nuclear response from the United States would be within minutes and coming over the Arctic for them momentarily. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again. Also, Richard Daniel Jr. said Bologna is nasty. Same with spam. I know it's bologna. I just wanted to say bologna. But anyways, I'll agree about bologna. I don't really like bologna. I think it is nasty. However, spam is delicious. It's delicious. It's nutritious. It's the best. It's the best. You can put that stuff on a sandwich. It's great. But with that, thank you once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. I didn't even have to. We just wanted to because it was fun. And also, thank you for being here tonight, Richard Daniel Jr. And also, I'm wondering, is Walter okay? We haven't seen Walter in here a little bit.
Yeah, I think Walter was here earlier in the stream. He sent me a message.
Earlier? I didn't.
I think he's still here. Let me check. Yeah, he's still here. Voice crack.
Well, I haven't seen him a lot in the live chat. Every time I look over, I haven't seen him.
He's definitely here.
Walter, if you're here, say hello. I would like to know. Anyways, with that, also, I'm just wondering, because now that I've said it about Walter, where is Mark?
Mark
Slavo-Ukraini. I've been looking for him. I'm hopefully nothing's bad happened, because Packrat disappeared, and then Packrat came back and let us know that he had a mild heart attack. Magic Sky Girl left, and then she came back, and her power had gone out. Hopefully nothing like that's happened to Mark, because I haven't seen Mark in here, and if Walter A. Lakota's in... I don't see Walter. He hasn't responded yet.
He might be watching in the background or something.
Maybe, yeah. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But I'm always concerned where the LSA members are, because every once in a while someone comes back and they've had something bad happen to them. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Right. So up next, we have a $20 super chat from Mike G. Oh.
Yeah, he's here. He's still here. Okay, good. Well, I was just wondering, Walter. I wanted you to be safe out there, and it's good to know you're in here tonight. But let's get back to this question.
All right. So back to this question. We have a $20 super chat from Mike G, who says, a victory for Ukraine. Thanks, Enforcer and Matt, for bringing the news and truth to the world. And thank you, Mike, for supporting this little operation here.
And thank you so much for the support, Mike. Your support does help us to keep on continuing that mission of news and truth around the world. And, of course, without it, this wouldn't be possible. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support. It does mean a whole load to us that people help this channel keep on running, because without y'all, this truly would not be possible. Y'all have made this possible for 323 days, and hopefully we can keep making this possible until the very end. And so with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army!
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Daniel Murray, who says, considering the effectiveness of GPS-guided munitions, why doesn't Russia knock out our GPS satellites in that part of the world?
GPS guided munitions. The Russians really can't knock out satellites without violating the sovereignty of the satellites. Attacking them is kind of like attacking the United States directly, and that's the reason why. That's also why we don't really shoot down Russian satellites either. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well and fairly brief. It's generally just because they're considered sovereign, a sovereign entity or a sovereign object of the United States, that it can't really just be simply attacked and destroyed without pretty much going to war. So with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Frequency Harmonic, who says, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, do you think the next Ukrainian offensive will be designed to be the devastating death blow to the entire special military operation and convince the occupants, nice, to withdraw from the entire Ukraine?
I would say I would love to think that it would be the case, Frequency Harmonic, but I think that the next one will not be that ambitious in scope. I don't think they could do that in one fell swoop. I think, however, they could make a decisive victory that will affect the Russians and their war here forward, but it won't end it immediately. If, for example, if they start going towards Melitopol, they'll cut the Russians in two, but the war would still go on for a little bit longer, as the Russians would still try and straw feed some supplies to the western side of their front. And the eastern side would continue on somewhat as normal. They would still be connected to their supply lines, but the western side would eventually collapse. So it wouldn't necessarily be ending the war right then and there, but it would definitely be changing the course of it and cutting out a lot of the land that the Russians currently control. So in a way, yes, but ending the war literally, in a literal sense, in a very short amount of time, I don't think so, at least in my opinion. But of course, the Ukrainians have proven me wrong before, because I've usually had pretty normal expectations for them, and then they go well above and beyond them and complete these things in unbelievable amounts of time or on an unbelievable scale. But once again, I hope that does answer it fairly well, at least in my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, Frequency Harmonic, and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from White Lightning 777, who says, I know how the Ukrainians can recapture the salt mine. Every mine has ventilation shafts. Liquid nitrogen could be dumped down all of them at once. This will displace all the oxygen, and the orcs will die and engines won't start.
And thank you for the support. I think that is an interesting idea. I think it could work.
I think transportation might be a big issue on that one, because you have to like specially contain liquid nitrogen, and it's like very finicky, I think.
Yes, it's very finicky and very difficult to make and transport. So in a way, I would say it's a good idea. The implication of it and not the implication, the execution of an idea like that may be fairly difficult. And also gaining control to all of the vents that the mine use may also be fairly difficult as well. But it is an interesting idea, and it would work in theory. So I gotta say, pretty interesting one. And so with that,
I wonder what happens if you like shell a truck like that's full of liquid nitrogen. Like, does it like explode like insanely bad, or does it just sort of like, I wonder what it does.
I wonder. That's a good question. That's actually a really good question. I would like to see the Department of Defense put millions of dollars into that to see what happens. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we answered the question fairly well. And we are now on to the next one.
And speaking of chemicals, have y'all heard about that potential ban on gas stoves coming for the United States? It's kind of wild.
Yeah, kind of interesting, and I haven't really been looking into it all too much. But what is the explained reason as to the theory behind that?
Well, the government's saying that over 50 years of scientific studies shows that the gas stoves emit really bad chemicals like NOx and things, and it builds up in your home over time and can cause like all kinds of like ailments like asthma and respiratory problems.
Interesting. That's actually really interesting, and that's something that you would, of course, discover after 50 years. Usually,
yeah.
Well, I mean, like, that I'm not actually saying that jokingly. That's actually quite serious, because they didn't know asbestos was deadly until it had been used for thousands of years. Hell, they were using asbestos in fiber form even during the Roman Empire. And it had been used for that long, and then finally, just over the past few decades, they found out, wow, this stuff is killing people. It's giving them mesothelioma, and they're almost dropping over dead as soon as they inhale this stuff. This is actually really bad. And it's kind of crazy to think it took that long. You know, you would think that someone would eventually correlate the two, but then again, people used to use lead makeup, you know, like Queen Elizabeth I, and she died from it, and no one really knew what lead was or how toxic it really was, and also mercury and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I guess it's just kind of process of eventually going through and be like, wow, this stuff kills people. Let's not use it anymore. Because a lot of the stuff that was used in the Victorian era is no longer used at all anymore. Like at all. Like you can go back and look at a whole bunch of stuff and they will not touch it. Like we won't. But the Victorians would use it on a daily basis and it was very toxic.
Yeah, it just seems like I see a lot of people saying BS and stuff like that. I'm very skeptical of anything that the government tells us. But one thing I do know, the government never really likes to come out and like create a big stir about things like that. And that's a pretty like factual thing to say. Like if you say that gas stoves are causing an issue in your home, I don't really know what the government would benefit from by saying that. And for the government to be making an issue about safety, that's a little concerning to me, but you know, I don't know. Gas stove's been around forever, and it's not like everybody's going to just go like dump their gas stove and like not have a stove tomorrow. They're going to keep using it.
Also, this ban on stoves would probably not be retroactive. Because obviously, how in the world do you make everyone comply to this new code?
Oh, well, it's definitely not going to be retroactive. They'll just try to ban the sale of them in the future.
Yeah, and they'll also probably try and ban the use of them in new construction, most likely. One thing though that I have to say, you know, and you know, we're not weighing in on the actual sides here because I don't know if there are any sides to this thing. I don't really know much about it, but whenever the U.S. government, the federal government, steps forward and says we need to ban something, usually there is something serious behind that in terms of safety. They usually just don't ever go, we're going to ban this thing across the nation that's normally used for no reason. You can even see that back in the day with the Food and Drug Act passed under Theodore Roosevelt. That was passed because people were putting arsenic in food to try and make it look better for people to buy. And you got to remember, every once in a while, safety-wise, there is something to it. And usually when it comes down to conventional stuff like foods, ways to cook food, like ovens, there may actually be some merit to what they're saying that may have led them to freak out. In fact, the study may be showing stuff like it is actually slowly killing people or giving them some other forms of disfigurement. Maybe it's even messing with unborn kids. I don't know. I don't know a lot about it, so I'm just really talking off of hypotheses here. But I would give it a little bit. I think there should be a lot more information because I feel like they're holding back some stuff because they don't want people freaking out and trying to have a run on electric stoves. But I have a feeling that they're holding back a little bit of information so that way the public doesn't go into a raw panic about what gas stoves may actually be doing to people. I don't know. But anyways,
well, you know what I said is why don't you just turn like, you know, the vent, like the hood on the gas stove, and shouldn't that like suck the gases out? But then there was already an answer that the government was giving about, no, that won't get the gases out. It's like, well, why wouldn't it? Don't gases rise?
Yeah, that's a good point. Anyways, we're going to move on from this because you know, I'm going to be honest with you, the only reason I'm talking about it is because I have no idea, like, that this is just something that's been brought up by Matty recently. I don't really have an idea of what the political lay of the land is on this. Who supports it, who doesn't support it, I have no idea. All I know is that I heard about it, and usually whenever the government historically has ever tried to do anything like this, it's usually been for good cause. You know, like on the consumer side of products. We're not talking about everything else, you know, because I'm sure people are going to try and move it that way. On the consumer side of products and banning things like this, usually they have a good reason for it that's found out about 10 years later. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $25 super chat from Mech Tactical, who says, I have to play catch up from last night, that bozo. 100 hands. Sorry, I missed it. I'd ride, let's see. I'd ride that guy 100 miles.
Oh, God.
It's okay. I didn't understand what he meant by that when I read it, but it's funny watching people who barely understand the wheel try to interpret geopolitics. Shaking my head.
And thank you for the support, Mick Tactical. And Mick Tactical was wanting to put 100 hands on that head on. He was like,
he's coming for dome.
Yeah, he was gonna get him in the dome. But with that, Man, it's funny watching people who barely understand the wheel trying to interpret geopolitics. After a while, we just decided they were a bot. I know you probably watched the whole thing and watched us discover that because they would never actually respond to anyone's questions. You know, they would just keep on spewing out the rhetoric. And that's usually bot activity. When you just can't even respond to questions, you just shoot out rhetoric. But with that, I got to thank you so much for the support, Mac Tactical. I wish you were here to give that guy a piece of your mind and a little bit of the action, because that would have been hilarious to see. And I loved watching people really give that guy a hard time in the live chat. It was just funny. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from JR, who says, "Party on, fellas."
Party on what?
Party on, fellas.
I thought you said party on fellas. I was like, what are you talking about, man?
Party on, fellas. Party on.
But
party on, fellas. Go ahead.
Gotta make sure to party on, party hard. Make sure you party so much, you gotta get your nasal cavities restructured. It's a good surgery. Listen to me talk now. Witness me.
But anyways, I gotta thank you so much for the support. And we will party on. There's not really a lot for me to add, but we will party on. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for supporting us, so that way we can continue to party on hard here on this channel. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $25 super chat from Merc Tactical once again, who says, "One YouTuber to another. I'll come on my days off, no problem. Ex-military here. You want me to jack somebody up for disturbing the peace? I'm game." Sounds like he's let's say a gun for hire, maybe.
He sounds like he's a rabble-rouser. He sounds like he's a Pinkertons. You know who the Pinkertons were, Matthew?
No, definitely not.
It was like a guns for hire group back in the day. You could, if you were like a company owner of like a steel mill or something, and your guys were like rioting and striking and stuff, you would call them the Pinkertons, and they would put those boys down. I mean, like they would put them. They would
so kind of like the Merryweather group.
Yeah, in GTA trips, yeah, sure, Matthew. God,
you didn't catch that for 10 seconds.
Everything with you always goes back to GTA. I've noticed that over time. Like that must be your like favorite game.
GTA is like so realistic. They have literally everything. They have the mercenary group. They have the insurance company, Moore's Mutual. They have it all.
Matthew, realistic. You go riding around town, you can run anyone over, and you can go into a garage and lose your wanted level. There's nothing realistic about that. That is not.
I mean, minus the laws, it's pretty realistic.
Minus the law, it's pretty realistic up in there. But anyways, I'd honestly have to say, not really. I wasn't really a big fan of.
No, I'm joking, by the way.
After a while, okay, good. I was about to be like, man, that's not a good thing to say when we're running a war stream that you think GTA is realistic. But with that, I think we covered that fairly well. I mean, no, actually, if you want to come in here and jack people up, Mac Tactical, let me tell you something. You come to the right place. We're always needing guns for hire here in the Lee Spring Army. And I hope that we have all of our good old boys, come in here and rough up these little scoundrels whenever they pop up. Because I know they love a good bullying, because they always cry afterwards. So with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Mac Tactical, and helping this channel to keep rolling.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Edgar Moreno, as well as a $20 super chat from Lewis. They both leave a $20 donation, and they don't leave a comment, sadly. But Edgar and Lewis, thank you very much for that support, as always. And Lewis and Edgar, I'm going to say it for the 5th time now, they've been around forever. So thank you guys for sticking with us through all the big news and also the insanity on the side. But unfortunately, what say you?
Lewis and Edgar. Lewis and Edgar's. Lewis and Edgar's Bakery. Y'all have got a business model. Y'all have got a good one. But with that, thank you so much once again to both of y'all for the support. It helps out this channel a lot. And I say that a lot. Sound like a broken record sometimes, but I'm being honest when I say it. Y'all are helping us to keep the lights on back here, and I gotta thank y'all so much for that. Y'all didn't leave a comment, but we always make sure to recognize every single person who helps this channel every single night to keep running and supports us, so that way we can keep this thing going, because y'all are the only thing that keeps this channel running. We don't make ad money. all of the streams. Whenever we upload a video, we do run the ads because that's the only way YouTube will promote them. But we still don't really make any money on them. You know, like to be honest with you, I think one of the videos got like 40,000 views and we made $30. So it's not like something that will sustain you. You know, it's just something to make sure it gets promoted. And also, sorry,
Are you talking about the monetization from the videos?
Yeah, I'm talking about AdSense from our normal videos. They make they make like nothing. We just run
definitely aren't going to get anywhere with that. I don't think
we just run the ads on those because we found out that's the only way YouTube actually promotes them. So we have to run them. But on the stream, they'll promote it just because we don't have to run ads on it. So y'all are the ones who actually keep this thing alive on a day-by-day basis. Y'all are the only way we can actually survive behind the scenes. And I got to thank both of y'all for the support once again, because without y'all, this truly is not a possible thing for us to do. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we did address both of those fairly well, Lewis and Edgar. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Richard Daniel Jr., who says, bologna, spam, and barbecue is nasty. Love y'all and keep up the good work, and take a question from the chat, if y'all wish.
Richard, I can't believe that you're still sticking up, saying the barbecue's nasty. I tell you what, Richard, I think we're revoking your Southern car. Matthew, take it from him. No, and then he just grabs.
Give me that, boy. Give me that back.
He just turns into wait. As soon as you take it from him, no, you ain't taking that away from me, sir. Give that back. I'm going to call security on you immediately. He turns into a Northerner. Thank you for the support. Nothing disparaging against Northerners. Northerners are pretty cool people. I know some. I literally pulled out the "I have friends" card. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support. And you're open to your own beliefs, Richard Daniel. But I got to tell you, Southern barbecue is some of the best fine things in the world right here. There's no way to beat Southern barbecue in my opinion. A pulled pork sandwich is one of the best cuisines out there. But with that, thank you once again, Richard Daniel. I hate to hear, though, you're not a believer in barbecue. It's saddening to me. It really is. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for letting us know, once again, that Richard Daniel, while being a full-on Southerner, does not like barbecue. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I saw Barry Mundy say, I'd be lost without my microwave. And that brings me back to the thing. Have you ever told the chat about Chef Mike?
Chef Mike?
Yeah, or Chef.
Our chef?
Yeah, Chef Mike.
Oh, you're talking about the microwave. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, who the hell are you talking about? I was like, we don't have a chef. We had a chef. What the hell? What? That's like we had a chef. Where is he? No, we haven't told him. Would you like to tell him, Matthew?
Jerry S. said, WTF, question mark.
I know, that's what I was thinking too, Jerry. I was like, what? We have a chef? When? Since when?
I got that off of, Kitchen Nightmares. I think Gordon Ramsay said that at one point. He's like, y'all got to retire Chef Mike. He's not doing you any favors in the restaurant.
Oh, man. Sometimes, though, that show is so lame, like Kitchen Nightmares. Where'd you get the salad? I go to from the freezer. Oh my god! Salads aren't just kept in the freezer normally.
Yeah, and then they run to the freezer and it's got mold everywhere, that shocking. Oh my god! What in the matter is going on?
The freshest thing in this pantry is the pigeon. And then they put drip on the pigeon.
Put that really sharp violin sound.
No, wait a minute, hang on. I know the sound. Let me pull it up real quick, Matthew. I know it.
It's terrific.
I can find it real quick. Oh, you're gonna know when you hear it. It's called a water phone, if you want to know what the actual name of that is. There it is!
Oh my god, that's bad.
The Russians are wrong! Get that out of here! Get that out of here!
I love it.
Oh, man. I ought to keep that sounding up for the rest of the stream, so if anything ever happens, I can play it. But anyways, what was the super chat even? Can we reread that one again?
It was no super chat. It was just somebody talking about their microwave.
Oh,
and I went from there.
I forgot. But this microwave does not know how to cook. Oh
That
god.
was the overused sound by Gordon Ramsay's production crew.
Oh man. This water's cold!
Where the hell they come up with that sound to use it for the TV show? They're like, we need a sound that's so nasty it's gonna make people cringe at the sound of it. And then they're like, play the sound.
You know, Matthew, honestly, the sound sounds like something from a horror movie. You know, like when you're walking through a house and you see the demon out of the corner of your eye or something. That's like what should play then. But they'll play it by like when sitting there and going, like the restaurant owner will go, "My husband cheated on me." What are you kidding me? You know, like it's just overdone. It's just so overdone. Anyways, Matthew, I was just thinking of Gordon Ramsay went to the Russian army. This artillery shell's 40 years old!
Oh, well, you know, speaking of which, Gordon Ramsay actually did meet Putin at one point, and he was like scared to death. Like he was shaking. He was like all out of sorts. He wasn't being the big bully self he usually is. You should pull that up. It's really like insightful.
Well, you know, usually Gordon Ramsay, from what we're told, although, you know, it's like, you know, someone with his kind of TV personality, everything's very altered and very carefully put. They say that he's actually a nice guy off of Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmares. And it seems like in some of them he is, like when he hung out with Jeremy Clarkson on film. But I don't know. I mean, like, you know, I don't really know him personally. I still think he's pretty neat. He did show up on, and it looks like we're not going to get doxxed anymore for this, but Mr. Beast's video before, remember that? When he went on, like, the diet and he had to eat, like, the burger at the end. He seemed pretty nice then. I think, like, the way it was explained, and I think the way Ramsay actually explained it, is that he's only, like, hyper-violent to people who think they can cook good and they can't. He goes off on them, but everyone else he's actually pretty nice to, because I couldn't really imagine him going around, like, his mentor and acting like that, because his mentor is just literally like off his rocker.
Yeah, I think so.
Marco
yeah,
Pierre
are you talking about Marco Pierre White?
I'm talking about Marco Pierre White. Like, he's off his rocker. Yeah. He just acts like an arrogant butthead to everyone he ever runs into.
Add a little bit of no stockpot.
Yeah, and in Britain, there's a law where there is no law where you have to let people know that you're sponsored by someone. So he's just throwing North Stockpot into everything, and he doesn't let anyone know he's actually sponsored by them, and that's why he keeps doing that. Which honestly, like, you know, coming from America where you have to announce where you have a sponsor, it's kind of a little, it seems, of course it's fine in Britain, it's acceptable, there's no law stopping them from doing that, but it seems kind of scummy to sit there and really get people to buy into North Stockpot and never tell anyone that you're sponsored by them. You know, like, you're making a North Stockpot to be out like this wonder sauce thing, and it's really just your sponsor.
Yeah, North Stockpot's really, really rough.
Yeah, but anyways, we're going to be moving on to the next one, because we've gone down a rabbit hole here that is just weird.
Yes. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Avari Mandubradis, who says, skit. John Travolta is flying Orange Man's new downgraded private plane, and the Orange Man's private gold-plated toilet clogs while in flight. Go.
I don't know what John Travolta sounds like.
He sounds like
John Travolta. I don't know what he sounds like. Let me go pull him up real quick. The enforcer doesn't know what John Travolta sounds like. All right, now it's time to go pull it up.
Oh.
So, John Travolta. Wait, isn't this a guy from, like, Pulp Fiction or something?
Yes. He's also the fellow, I think, that heads the Church of Scientology, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Real character he is.
Interesting.
He's also from Greece, as McLovin You Tonight said.
So let me see. Hopefully this doesn't...
Jimmy Fallon for the first time. Oh my god.
So, I don't really know how to do his voice. Like, I listen to that. I can't play a lot of it because I feel like we're going to get, you know, like, content ID'd for it. But I don't really know if I could do his voice. Could you put in a substitute instead? Because I could probably do a substitute voice instead of John Travolta. Because I don't think I can do that one. Like, being honest with you, like, the little bit I heard. So we'll wait for a second until we get a replacement voice. because I don't want to let you down, and I kind of already let you down, but I want to make sure that on our recovery we don't let you down a second time. So we're gonna wait for a second and let me know.
And everybody said that it's Tom Cruise at Scientology. No, it's actually John Travolta and Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise is like their most popular celebrity that they have.
Let's see who heads the Church of Scientology.
Oh, that's right. He doesn't head the Church of Scientology. I think he's just one of the top people in it. I think. Wait a minute, it's David Miscavige. Yep, you just pulled it up.
Yeah, you just saw it on screen. You just read it off screen.
No, I was actually thinking to myself, and then I looked up and saw it. Bad timing.
It's John Travolta, Scientology. Let's see if that. The rumors over the years that John Travolta had. What? That has nothing to do.
Oh.
Let's see. Is making a big move away from Scientology. So he was a member of the Church of Scientology. So yeah, he was
for sure.
Yeah, so Matthew was right. Yeah, get off his back here when he is a part of Church of Scientology. Wait a minute, R. Kelly was one. I'm fighting for my effing life, man.
Oh man. What'd say, Richard? Calm down, Richard, or whatever his name is, like first name.
Calm down, Dick. It's just a storm. Sit down.
But I can't. I'm fighting for my life, man.
Wait a minute. Sounds like someone's breaking in. It's just a storm, Dick. Sit down. I'm fighting for my effing life, man.
Yes.
Oh,
looking
man.
straight at the camera, like putting on a performance.
Oh man, and then he got found guilty anyway. Oh man. Let's see. So have we gotten a voice in replacement of John Travolta?
He said you were cleared to improvise voices.
All right. So.
Oh, we have a cam bot in here, by the way. Let me get rid of that.
Private dating chat girls. What the hell does that mean? Like that wasn't even a coherent sentence. Like that was just words. Anyways, all right. So
I gotta say that the private plane that I've got is not as great as the last one. Nancy Pelosi has a better one now. And that 737 that they're always flying around on. And don't you agree?
Well, I'd have to agree with you, Mr. President, but I gotta tell you, nobody makes a better plane than the Gulfstream 650. The Gulfstream 6...
Okay, listen, I don't need to spill, but I gotta tell you, we gotta get to the next place real quick. I've gotta sell those Trump NFT baseball cards, by the way. You can find one online for $99.99. They're limited edition. But for some reason, they're still around. But you can get yourself one. Anyways, merciless plug. Getting back to what I'm doing, I'm gonna take a little bit of a crap because, of course, this plane is a little crappy. I feel like I gotta bless this thing.
Whatever you say, Mr. Trump.
Let's see here. I'm gonna get down on the crapper. All right, yeah. So, what have you been doing, Sam, rather than worshiping my picture that is in your cockpit?
Well, actually, I've been sitting here trying to get myself another voice acting career, and you can always find me online at Fiverr. You can find all kinds of voices that you want. Mostly voiced by Matthew, not me, but you can find them. But that's all.
Hey, listen, man. Enough talk. But I 1 second. I gotta flush. Oh, wait a minute.
Royal flush.
Oh man, that's not good.
What is it, Mr. Trump?
Well, I gotta tell you something. I gotta tell you, this looks like a bunch of shit.
Well, that's usually in the toilet, Mr. President.
Well, no, I'm telling you, like, it's overflowing. It's overflowing. It's overflowing.
It's overflowing. It's the plane. Anyways, I hope that if
Enforcer's talking to himself now, all the bots are gonna be like, look, he's talking to himself now. He's crazy.
Oh, he's crazy. He's crazy. Oh, but anyways, I thank you so much for the support of Ari. I hope that does address what you wanted fairly well. And I hope that was funny. But with that,
we're on to the next one, and we're gonna build a huge plane. It's gonna be the biggest plane the world has ever seen. It's gonna be huge, believe me. And who in the world would be flying? Everyone but me is going to pay for it, and then I'll pay for it.
But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $20 super chat from Nick Riva, who says, what OSINT intel do you have regarding the 500,000 general orc mobilization per source cited on Monday? Much love from Santa Monica.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, thank you for being a Leaf Spring Army member all the way from Santa Monica in California. I actually had a friend saying he wanted to go to California today. Maybe he'll go there. But answering that question, we unfortunately don't have a lot of intel on the 500K mobilized, and we also did not run a stream on Monday for there to be any information for us to have divulged in. So unfortunately, there's not really a lot we can work on. If we hear that it's in the making, it apparently hasn't happened yet, but we will see that the 500K will be called up probably within the next couple of weeks based off of our initial suggestions, or at least the reports. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment the question the best we can, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of clear information about this 500K mobilized here right now. We're not really sure if it's happened yet. And so with that, I hope that does address the question the best we can, and thank you so much once again for the support and being all the way from Santa Monica. Now, real quick, we have to pull it up.
Santa Monica. Monica Lewinsky has no relations to me whatsoever, but she was one to deal with the Clintons. Clintons, they're terrible people. For some reason, we were great friends, but then we went at each other like dogs in the election. That makes no sense, but we did. And
This is Del Piero Pier.
Oh, shit. Oh, wait a minute. I can't cuss too much, but it's Santa Monica Pier. Oh, my. Look at that. Wow, look. It's the original muscle. It's the original muscle. There's a whole bunch of swole people here, I bet you. That doesn't look comfortable at all. This is the way you lose your testicles. Right there. That thing just snaps up and they're gone. That's called a cheap neutering. Let's see here. Let's go to the other one. This guy right here, once again doing it, pulling the old neuter. You can see this person right here enjoying the ball. I don't even know what the hell that is. There's also a ocelot cat, rainforest of Amazon. Really cool. And they also got the attractions. They got the typical Ferris wheel, the roller coaster. Pretty neat, I gotta say. But nothing's neater than Mar-a-Lago. You can go and check out Mar-a-Lago anytime you want. It's a great place. Might even have some interesting greets in there.
You know what? Like, seriously, like right to the left side of this Ferris wheel, like on the beach area down there, is usually where my Hydra spawns in.
Oh my god. Oh my god, Matthew. You gotta stop. You got a problem. You gotta stop, man. Let's drop down in Santa Monica proper. And
Angry Penguin said, is this GTA 5? Yes, it is, actually.
This is where GTA 5 is kind of based. Yes, it was based off of this location. Everyone's in a GTA 5 but me, apparently. Like, dang. But yeah, it doesn't look that bad, actually. Looks a lot better than I thought it would. Because, you hear a lot of bad rap about this place, but it's not bad at all. It actually is nice. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment the support fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Michael Cabrera, who says, "You two sound like you've been hanging out for years, ? Thanks for bringing back Mike Tyson yesterday." And also, Michael, I guess we've been hanging out for, let's see, 21 years, I believe.
No, 20, because I wasn't alive the first year you were, so...
No, that's right, 20.
I was a phantom in Matthew's imagination. He was a schizo in his first year of life. I was sitting there in his head, "Hey, what's up, man?" And he was sitting there, "Go, it's really good." And then as we grew up, Matthew would sit there and he would say stuff like, "Gee, Andrew, I hope one day that we become big YouTubers and we run a channel talking to everyone about the war in Ukraine." And I would go, "Yeah, that's a great idea." But I'm just kidding. And also that was really hard for me to do and really hurt my voice. But moving on from that.
It really did a number on my speakers too.
Yeah, and it really hurt. It actually has hurt my voice. But moving on from that silliness, I would say we have known each other for several years. I would assume. Hopefully. We are brothers after all, so I hope so. And also, can you reread the second part?
Thanks for bringing Mike Tyson back yesterday.
And absolutely no problem at all. It's Mike Tyson here, delivering all the news to you from Ukraine. Of course, I thank you so much once again for the support. It means a lot to us here on the Enforcer channel. Of course, it means Mike Tyson personally, because I wouldn't be able to score those knockout punches that you see me scoring in my older age with this 9 if it wasn't for the Enforcer. So thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope you enjoyed this little return of Mike Tyson. I'm sure the comments about start rolling through about I should be on the short bus. This is disrespectful to the Big Mike. And let me tell y'all something. This is done in absolute respect. Number one, this man would murder me. Even at his age right now, he would kill me. So if I thought this was disrespectful and he would eventually watch this, I would be afraid. Second, it's my thing. Like I just like doing Mike Tyson. And so I gotta thank you so much once again for the support. It means a lot to me. And to all the haters, you just want to be me. You just want to be Mike. You just want to be Big Mike, but you'll never be Big Mike. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
Fight. I want to see a Mike Tyson versus Logan Paul fight, because I just want to see Logan Paul get smacked down like hard, like back to where like he gets humbled again.
You know, the Paul brothers were annoying back when they were doing the Team 10 Disney thing. I honestly feel like they've gotten more annoying as they've gone on. Like, it's gotten worse. Like, some people are at like, wow, they've really mellowed out. Like, now they're doing the CryptoPunks thing, you know? That was a great...
Be careful with that, because they're getting sue happy over people speaking about that.
Well, it's still a little interesting to me. And, you know, we can't say anything definitively about it, but it is fairly interesting. Allegedly. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So, up next, we have a $17 super chat from Cindy Mitchell, who says, have you heard that the Ukraine, let's see here. Have you heard that the UASS caught a traitor, helped Russia, helped AU targets?
I think I did. I think we actually saw that a little while ago. But it was a while ago. I think it was a month ago. But yes, we did see that, if that is the one. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and I hope we're thinking about the right person. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have another super chat from Cindy Mitchell, who puts in another $17 donation and says, sorry for the brain fog and bad typing, and send one to the chat.
And also, totally fine for the brain fog. Everyone has it. And I got to be honest with y'all. Today's been a hell of a day for me, because I got up at, so to let y'all know, I went to bed around 2:30 last night, and then I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, so, you know, somewhat okay amount of sleep, but still small, and I've been going ever since. I went to college, went to a class, and then hung out with some friends because they wanted to hang out. Then I met another friend that I was not planning to meet, but they were pretty cool, so I hung out and talked with them for a little bit, and then I had to go tend to other stuff. And then I got home, and then, you know, I immediately started working because I only had 30 minutes in between getting home and working. So it's been a day for me. And so I've had some brain fog. Totally fine. I totally understand. So with that, we're going to get over to your live chat question. And thank you so much once again for the support before we get to it and helping this channel to keep on running, because you folks are the ones who make this happen every day. And with that, we are on to the live chat.
All right. So on to the live chat question. We have one from, let's see here, the Sunken Grave, who says, if the Russians ever destroyed a HIMARS or Patriot system, would the West admit it?
Yes, we would. Because we have said things before that weren't even true, like, Ukrainian weapons are leaving the country and they're going to black markets. Oh, gee. Oh, man. And then we go over there and they're not. So I'm sure if one of them did get destroyed, we would be saying that. Someone would be saying that over here, whether it be for good or bad, because things like that just generally come out. And also, if it was destroyed, the Russians would finally give us probably some very clear evidence that it was a HIMARS and not like fuel tanks like it was before, or an Oshkosh truck that carried an M777 or something like that, because that's what they've been doing so far. And if they finally destroy one, I'm sure they'll be making it a big deal, and we'll probably hear about it here in the West as well. And so with that, because one thing you will hear is that the Pentagon has admitted that some M777s have been destroyed, and they're not wrong. A couple of them have been. From what we know, it's about 5 or 6 M777s over the course of the whole war have been destroyed, and you'll see that the Department of Defense and the Pentagon admit to that and say that a couple of them were destroyed. So with that, I hope that answers the question and gives a little bit of validity as to the mostly truthful statements that the Department of Defense gives. And you always also have to remember that every once in a while the Department of Defense isn't going to always give a truthful statement, because remember, there were AGM-88 harms in Ukraine practically since the 3rd month of the war, and we didn't hear about that until about the 5th month of the war.
So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one here. Let's see. The next one is going to go to Terrence Custer, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Happy Hump Day." And I hate to say it, Terrence, but it's actually now Thursday for us. But we'll definitely go with that. Happy Hump Day. Do you think Russia's strategy is one of pure attrition? They do have more bodies than they can throw into the meat grinder.
Matthew, did you just do Bushism?
What's that?
Like Hump Day's Wednesday.
I know today's Thursday now. It's 12:01.
Oh my God! Get out of here! Get out of here! You're gonna sit
Did
there.
you just do a Bushism?
Shame on once. That is a Bushism right there. Shame on once. Fool me twice. Look, you screw me up.
Or like you said, the very brutal and disgusting invasion of Iraq. I mean Ukraine. Whoops.
Also, I like this one the best. We got to make sure to help you people out so you can put food on your family. I like that one the best. That one was just hilarious. And then I think man and fish can coexist peacefully. Man, that guy, he was full of funny lines. Like, he was just messing up all of them. Hilarious though. But anyways, moving on from that. Thank you for the happy hump day. It is Thursday now on the stream, but I still call it hump day. It's still Wednesday to me. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Now reread it again real quick beyond the hump day part so I can make sure we covered everything.
Do you think Russia's strategy is one of pure attrition? They do have more bodies than they can throw into the meat grinder.
It's not, because that is a tactic that a country in the defensive would pull, and they're supposedly still in an offensive, so they wouldn't be pulling a war of attrition. It's most likely the Ukrainians trying to pull a war of attrition because they're on the defensive, and that's a defensive strategy. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have... Terrence Custer said, "You got me."
You got me.
Oh, goodness. But seriously, though, Terrence, thank you for... Oh, what?
I'll tell you something, Matthew. As Terrence Custer once said, the president's not guilty if he does it, and you got me. You got me good, and I'm resigning from the office, effective immediately. Richard M. Nixon will not be here anymore. I'm not a crook.
But anyways, I'm just kidding. I don't know why, but I had to do it. Anyways, I'll let Matty get back to what he was saying.
So back to what I was saying, we're on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Richard Kame Gibson, who says, "Aloha and howdy, y'all. Can y'all sing the theme song to Rawhide and replace some keywords with M1 Abrams or Bradley's? LSA all the way in Slava Ukraine. Aloha, my friends."
And
with a bunch of laughing faces. I'll just say, Richard, I gave up singing about a week ago when we had that little failure on the stream.
About a week ago, and I thank you so much for the support. Sadly, I don't sing at all, and I don't even know the song specifically that you're talking about, unfortunately. But I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But sadly, I don't think we can fulfill that request because, one, I don't know the song Rawhide, and two, I can't sing. But with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, without you, it wouldn't be possible. So I hate that we can't do what you're asking, but you're helping this channel to keep running. It's a great service. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Brad Liebarger, who says, "I don't always agree with you guys, but keep up the good work. Don't underestimate the importance of Soledar. The salt mines would be a strategic frontline ammo and food store."
Listen, bud. Whenever I say something, it's true. Because the president said it and the president can't be wrong. But I gotta thank you so much once again for the support. Because while you and me, we don't agree on everything, we do agree on one thing. Sending guys into Watergate with flashlights is not really a smart idea. I'm not a crook, but when I am, I do it poorly.
But thank you so much once again for the support. And also, it's fine to not agree on everything, but I found that there's always some kind of a disconnect most of the time whenever I say it's fine to not agree on everything, because some viewers take that as it's time for me to verbally degrade both Matthew and the Enforcer on stream on their live chat and expect to be here. And I know that you just disagree normally, but every time that's brought up a little bit, I always think about that, because we've actually had a couple of interesting run-ins where someone will disagree with us and then they just want to cuss us out for it. You know, and it's like, there's really no reason to do that over anything. And secondly, how rude is that? You know, it's like, you can talk things out normally or don't talk them out at all. You know, and I don't think people get that. And, you know, to go on a little bit of like a speech here, one thing that's also really interesting to me is that people will have known rules about this channel, rules that have stood for hundreds of days. We've never changed our rules, like the no politics rule. The no politics bit rule has been around since the first day that this channel ran, all the way before it was even a Ukraine war channel. There was no politics. And then, for some reason, someone will take an affront to that, although they've been here forever, and then create a problem out of it. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me for that reason, because it's been something that's been around forever. And you know, and then they get really rude, start bad mouthing people, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you know, not only that, people act like they can say that, and it's like Walmart or something around here where we have company policies and we can't, like, you know, kick people out or something like that, because it's like, you know, we're just people. You know, it's like, I can't believe that people actually think that they can just treat other folks like that, even through the internet, because like, we're people. And we're not going to deal with that kind of crap, you know, like, just being honest, like, if you want to be rude, we're not going to deal with it. You're gone, you know, because we don't want to sit here and have people degrading us for 3.5 hours straight while we're trying to cover news. You know, that's just rude. And not only that, that makes us feel like crap. But anyways, I'm not going to go on about that too much longer, but thank you so much for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Richard Kame Gibson once again, who says, Enforcer, aloha from Waikiki. I love the LSA. Roll 'em, roll 'em, roll 'em. Keep those Bradleys moving. Keep those Bradleys moving. Rawhide. Cheer! Aloha, Slava, Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support. And another aloha. We got a lot of Hawaiian viewers in here tonight, Matthew. A lot of them. A lot of them. And also, I would love to give another shout out to our favorite fort in Hawaii, Fort DeRussi. We always got to call out Fort DeRussi. Thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And not only that, being one of our Hawaiian viewers in the Lee Spring Army. That's really cool to know that a lot of our viewers are from Hawaii. And also, I hope y'all have been enjoying tonight's stream. Everyone from Hawaii. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, it seems like you got the rawhide thing. But with that, on to the next one.
And on to our next one. We have a $10 super chat from Walter A. Lakota Jr., our other Hawaiian resident, who says, Aloha, Enforcer Matt, and LSA, from OG Ellison Bosun. Hawaii fact. There was a second Pearl Harbor attack by IJN using flying boats. I-401 was sunk off of Oahu. Boneyard is West Lock at Pearl.
What? Let's pull that up. Let's find it. So, Oahu. Or as Matthew likes to call it, Oahu. So here's
I have a problem with that. Like, seriously, I'm not just doing it just to be funny. I actually can't pronounce that very well for some reason.
But it's literally spelled out, Matthew. It goes Oahu. Oahu.
Something's not connecting.
You always go Oahu. That's like when you're a kid, you're trying to pronounce Honolulu. Everyone always goes Honolulu. You know, like for no reason at all. But let's see. So where did he say it was again?
Sunk off of Oahu, and Boneyard is West Lock at Pearl.
West Lock at Pearl. So it's in Pearl Harbor. Where's the West Lock? West Lock, Pearl. Middle Lock. There's a Middle Lock. So this is West Lock? Yeah, here we go. Let's see. West Lock at Pearl. We're looking for it. There's the weapons depot. Not seeing it. You know, someone just said I need to go to Hawaii for vacation. I think there's more Lee Spring Army members per density in Hawaii than anywhere else. So I've got to be honest with y'all, because a lot of our viewers are either from these few places. Australia, Hawaii, or I think Florida. Like, that's where a lot of viewers are from. And also, there's a lot.
If I scrap it, it would be like $2,000 for the tickets.
That's true. That's true.
It'd be insanely expensive to go to Hawaii.
Or as you would call it, Hawaii. Hawaii?
Yes.
Just to pull out of Michael Jackson. I can't find the plane, though. Where is it? We're looking around the shores of the Middle Lock. Wait a minute, is that it? Nah, that can't be it. Watch that be it. That's it. Dude, go back. You know, they're like, wait. I can't find this freaking thing.
I-401 was sunk off of Ahu. Boneyard is Westlock and Pearl.
Yeah,
It says towards the right.
towards the right. Okay, so it is towards the right. So it's over here somewhere?
And it's the left.
Towards the right.
Oh.
I never looked at the left. I just was looking at the right the whole time. We'll just forget that.
Hey, it's a boat.
You can buy me a boat. Yeah, Mandy knows that one. We got some kind of like encampment right there. Towards the right. We're looking at the shore. I hope this is the right place to look. Wait a minute. There's a buoy right there. Maybe that marks the spot. Apparently not. Where the hell is this? We've been looking for a long time. There's the bow of a ship. Actually, there's a whole ship right here. It's just broken apart.
Oh, that could be Boneyard. That could be it.
That could... Powder Point? Nope, doesn't pull up anything. No pictures. Honolulu Point. There's some earthworks over here. It looks like an old fort that's been left alone. And I'm still not seeing it. We've gotten all the way up to the top again. Man! What the hell? Like, I'm gonna have to just pull this thing up. So, Westlock, Japanese plane. So, Westlock disaster.
Wait, Walter A. Lakota said, correction, it's Muddle Lock. My bad.
Oh my god, you had us looking around this thing. So it's Middle Lock.
Oh, he had the enforcer panicking.
Yeah,
Walter, you had the enforcer freaking out. He's like, "Where's the lock? Where's the lock?" He had him looking on the left instead of the right. And everything.
I was sitting there. Sounds like someone's losing their mind. Like I was sitting there, like, where is this thing? All right, so it's on the right side. So we'll go over here, right side. Let's see, we're looking at the shore. I'm having a feeling it's probably near the shore. The Pan Am landing site. No way! That's super cool. That's where the Clippers used to, like, dock. You know, like the Clipper planes, the Boeing 314s?
Yeah, they probably gave out mean haircuts there.
Oh, yeah, man. Like, you seen this thing? Like,
Yeah, the Clippers.
Man, these things are elegant.
Man. Reminds me of the Spruce Goose.
Man, that's what it looks like on the inside. Talking
Ooh,
about...
wow.
Yeah, I mean, like, they were high-class flying back then, man, on Pan American. Pan American was the airline, like, the one to go to. And there's not a picture, but kind of like a 3D model of what a Pan Am Clipper would have looked like. They were flying boats, so they just used... Like, what was really cool about that, it was an industry innovator because they would just use port infrastructure for the most part to run their aircraft, so you didn't have to build, like, brand new airports from the ground up. You just used the ports. Which was really cool and really smart. You can see the landing site there. And now it's just part of a neighborhood. Kind of sad, you know, to think that Pan Am went from being a dominant airline to bankrupt and gone. But I'm still trying to find this plane. I can't find the plane! I have a feeling you're about to tell us, Walter, that it's another lock. And if you do them,
It's East Lock.
Oh, God! It's
No,
like,
I was joking. I'm joking.
Let's see. Okay, so Japanese plane in the middle lock. Middle lock. I can't find this thing. I thank you for the support, Walter. Usually we always go to what you're talking about, but this time I just can't find it to save my life. Like, if you put a gun to my head right now and told me to find this thing or you would take me out, I just couldn't find it. Like, I've been looking and I cannot find this thing. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I'm sorry to let you down this one time, but I just can't find the freaking thing. It's going to drive me crazy here in a minute. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running and sharing that cool fact with us. Sadly, I can't follow through on it, though. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Rob Bertram, who says, at the LSA, why does Enforcer Matt's YouTube channel only have 439 subscribers?
Oh.
I feel like that was like a low-key burn on that one.
I don't know, was it? I mean, You know, like
No, it probably wasn't. No, Rob's been around forever. He wouldn't do that.
One of his videos has actually gotten quite a good bit of views, and interestingly enough, you know, especially for his channel size, we know that a lot of the traffic didn't come from here. It must have come from the algorithm, which is very interesting.
It definitely did. You know the problem though? I haven't uploaded a new video. I've only uploaded like one, and then I re-uploaded the other two I put on this channel. So,
So the one
that sounded familiar.
The one that did well, he uploaded 4 weeks ago, a month ago, and it's got 9.2 thousand views according to what I'm seeing. And he's gotten 439 subscribers. Fairly good, actually. That's pretty decent. What's really cool about that is that for the size of his subscriber base versus how many views that video got, that video analytically for his channel size is like doing fantastically. Like, not a lot of videos do that well at that channel size, and it was a fairly good video. It's the Honey Badger review, if y'all are wondering, and that's kind of been inspiring us to get to the Tommy gun review. Only problem is, I don't know when What?
I said someday,
Yeah,
like
someday.
maybe get around to the Tommy gun review.
like we were supposed to be meeting up with Jay, you know, who's offered to help us to get to a range to film. But I don't know when now, because like when I told him we would do this in January, I didn't know that I would have a class every day of the week that would take up all of my time on the normal days. And then we also have some other things that we're not going to talk about that are top secret that will also be happening. And I'm like really wondering, where in the world will the time be to do that? I don't know. But hopefully we'll get to that eventually. I don't know when though. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, everyone go subscribe to him if you haven't yet. And with that, we're on to the next one. Also, the name of the channel is Enforcer Matt. He's actually using that account as the one here. That it's the same profile picture and everything. With that, we're on to the next one.
Yes, and also, sorry about that. I was reading a comment here. I'm not sure what this person is going on about, but Rob, I know how you meant that. Like I was just joking around. Also. But thank you for the support, seriously though. But real quick though, let's check something here. So I'll let the enforcer judge how this one is. I had this viewer come in here that said, by the name of Nuke Warning, who said, "Can I ask a question without you getting mad?" I said, sure, yeah. They said, let's see here, what was the next one they put in? Let's see, let me get down to it real quick. They said, Ukraine is just a front to launder cash. I watched the FTX real time of the money going back and forth. So I said in response, do you believe Russia is in the right? To get a sense of where this person's coming from. And then they responded back and they said, let's see.
Wrong.
They're not completely wrong. Probably inferring that they're only slightly right. So what do you think, Enforcer? Is this a bot or not?
It sounds to me like one, you know, because it's always interesting, and people who always believe the conspiracy theories about Ukraine and what it is, they always, for some reason, are always Russian leaning. So it's never really like the story made them think that the Russians were in the right. It's more so that the story is just more confirmation that they're already correct in being pro-Russian. So honestly, it sounds kind of like a bot, but you know, I'll let you make the judgment on that one and let you see, because it sounds like they're going that direction, but I don't know. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so we're going to wait and see on that one and see what happens. But anyways, up next, we have a $10 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who said, I'd listen to you filibustering for hours at the Enforcer. Just randomly, if you got the time, listen to the liar bird imitating a jackhammer and chainsaw and a baby crying.
And thank you for the support. And I don't know what the last part means about the chainsaw and the baby crying and all that, but I do thank you for helping this channel to keep running. And thank you so much once again for the support and allowing this thing to keep rolling. And so thank you once again, and also for the compliment of saying you would listen to me filibuster. I don't ever think I'd want to filibuster if I was in a governmental position. But you know, who knows. Anyways, with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $10 super chat once again from Mech Tactical, who has gotten off for the night and said, send this one to the chat. So we will grab that one as we speak. This one goes to RL, who says, do you know what ship Ukraine sank yesterday? They added a ship to the count on yesterday.
Jay Bagwell actually was able to tell us last night, and I got to thank him for it. It was actually a Russian riverboat. It was destroyed by Ukrainian artillery fire somewhere in the Dnipro. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
one we have is from Psyops once again. He puts in a $10 donation. Let's see.
Nervously laughs, starts reading fervently.
Yes. He talks about. Let's see if I can paraphrase this. Saab says that the bots have a lot of stamina. They go all night. So there you go.
And they do go all night. Also, what do you do about that bot, Matthew? Did you get rid of it? Did you allow it to stay? What happened to it?
Well, it's still here. It hasn't said anything else ever since, so it's gotten a little shy.
It's gotten a little quiet. It's realized that it's been had, and it's just going to sit here for a little. It's going to sit and simmer.
Oh,
wait.
It said something. It said that airplane grounding was Russia testing our moves. It's speaking. It says our moves. So I'm assuming it's referring to NATO. So they're associating themselves with NATO.
So apparently, nuke warning is an American or something, or Western or living in the West.
Maybe
because saying our infers that, but testing our moves for what? I mean, we're still militarily superior, so testing our reaction times is something we would be doing to them. It doesn't really matter if they do it to us, because we'll still end up destroying them just because we have enough firepower. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Olivia McCarthy, who puts in a $7 super chat and says, if Belarus was dumb enough to send troops into Ukraine, then NATO should give permission for Poland to get involved.
Ooh. I see where you're coming from. I don't think that's a good idea, though, because the Polish, if they get attacked, that's constantly going to be invoking Article 4, technically, which then questions if we should bring up Article 5. And I don't think we should, because then that's directly involving a NATO alliance member into the war, and then the Russians may consider that the beginning of a full-on war with NATO. So I get where you're coming from. I do understand the sentiments, and I'm sure the Polish would love to do that. But at the same time, that could be risking the Third World War and also the stability of the entire alliance, because then the rest of them, whether they wanted to or not, would have to end up getting involved very soon. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Raku World Domination, who says, hi, Enforcer. You should do a poll to find out which world or regions viewers are from. I'm from Canada myself, and I'm curious if anyone else is as well in Slavia, Ukraine. Oh, and yes, we definitely have a lot of Canadians watching, that's for sure.
Oh, yes. Let me go to the analytics here, and I can actually give you all a bit of a breakdown on where y'all are from. So I'm going to go to the Geography tab and total, and we're going to go over the lifetime of this channel. And so here's the breakdown of where y'all are from. We don't have to run a poll for this. YouTube actually compiles this information for us. 53% of y'all are from America. 9.4% of y'all are from Canada. 6.6% of y'all are from the United Kingdom. 5.3% are from Australia. 2.8% are from Germany. 1.6% is from the Netherlands. 1.6% is also from New Zealand. Another 1.6% are also from Sweden. Another 1.3% are from the Philippines, which is actually kind of weird because you don't really hear of Philippine viewers a lot. Finland is 1%. Denmark, 0.9. Norway, 0.9. South Africa, 0.6. You don't really hear a lot from our South African viewers either much. Ireland, 0.6. France, 0.6 again. India, 0.5%. Despite India having a population of nearly 1.2 billion people, they only account for 0.5% of this channel's viewership. Switzerland, 0.5%.
Raj Kapoor is still here. Hey,
Raj Kapoor. He's repping the set. He's repping the set for India.
Raj Kapoor is what was the percentage of India viewers again?
0.5% of our channel viewers are from India, so he's in a very, very small group.
Yes, a very exclusive group.
Out of this entire channel's history, only 135,617 views have come from India.
Wait, say that again?
Out of this entire channel's history, only 135,617 views have come from India.
That's still quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, it is. But one thing that is really interesting is that their average view duration for an Indian is incredibly low. The average is 20 minutes and 7 seconds. The average view duration of someone from India is only 5 minutes and 19 seconds. Which is interesting. Maybe it's the language barrier. Maybe they click on here and they're like, oh, You know, I don't really understand English. Or maybe some of them do, and then they click off and go to a channel that is in Indian or something. I don't really know. Or Hindi. That's the actual language they speak. But, oh, wait, no, I think I just got that wrong. You know, I'm going to completely refrain from talking about the language of India because I think I'm saying it wrong every single time. So we're just going to refrain from that. Also, interestingly enough, 0.1% of our viewership, wait, no, 0.2%, you're not going to believe this, Matthew, comes from Puerto Rico. 0.2%.
Wow.
So Jose Diaz is like our ambassador to Puerto Rico.
Dang. And you see how much,
Wait,
like,
no,
if
no, no.
you're like in a small group of viewers, you have like a really exclusive, like, you're representing the whole country.
Yeah, I mean, like, that is crazy. Also, someone asked, what's the average view duration for the United States? It's 22 minutes and 7 seconds, which is 2 minutes above the average. The highest view duration, and I'll try and get that categorized that way, is the United States. The United States has the highest view duration. The United Kingdom has the second highest view duration. And let me check this out real quick, because I'm interested in this. So this is fairly interesting to me. Speaking of, like, the male and females and all that, females make up 9.3% of our channel's viewership. However, they make up 9.8% of this channel's watch time, meaning that for the amount of female viewers, they watch, on average, more than the males.
That's crazy.
Yeah, percentage-wise. It's Matthew Simps. They're out there watching this like they are in here. Anyways, viewer age, if y'all want to know that too, most of y'all are in between the ages of 35 and 44 years old. The cities y'all come from, the biggest one ever, New York City. The second biggest one, Sydney. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense because the Australians are actually kind of a little low, I guess you could say. But at the same time, they're the second biggest city in terms of watches and views. But anyways,
That's something. I'm sitting here looking at this bot. The bot finally went mad. It couldn't hold in its like excitement anymore. This nuke warning. Let's see here. I asked the bot, nuke warning. I said, "Do you think Ukraine's winning?" To like get a gist of what this bot thinks. Not even close. Why do you think NATO has been involved with all the equipment? Also, in true retrospect, all the leaders are working together to usher in the new financial system planned. So I said, "Whoa, that's propaganda." Then they go down here to the bottom, and they said, let's see here. What did they say next? You'll all see, and congratulations for the amount of money you're making on this chat. So really, I want to keep this going as long as possible. And the bot's going bonkers.
And then he said, what are you all donating for? Stop! Oh, man, you can get him now. You can get him.
He's gone.
Yeah, we've had enough of him.
He gone.
He gone! Cletus! Get the shotgun! Oh, man, he couldn't handle it anymore. I'm not even going to respond to it because we've responded to, like, what, 100 of those? So it would just be the same hash. Anyways, with that, let's get on to the next one. I'm not wasting time on bots.
All right, so we do have a few more super chats to go, and we have to get to our live chat, so then we're going to speed things up just slightly here.
That's exactly why I wasn't going to address the bot. I was like, whatever, we got a thing to do. It's like, we got to answer questions.
Yes. So up next, we have a $20 super chat from Jesus UCSB, who says, release the Abrams to Ukraine. I'm a former 19-kilo Tony in Los Angeles. Viva Mexico and Ukraine.
And also,
Tony.
M1 Armored Crewman. That is what your MOS is. I don't know all the MOSs, so sometimes I have to pull them up. Well, let's see here. You'll work as a team to operate tanks and assault vehicles and fire weapons to destroy enemy positions. You'll need to be ready to defend your country anywhere in the world. As opposed to what other job in the army where you're not ready to do the whole defending the country thing? Like what job is that? I'm the pipe repairman. I'm not ready to defend my country under any circumstances. But still, thank you so much for the support. Also really cool to hear that you're a Lee Spring Army tanker. And also, thank you so much for the support. And I would say the Abrams should go to Ukraine. There's no reason for it to not go. And finally, Slava Ukraini. And
Viva Mexico, long live Mexico. Mexico is where Nabisco and they make the cookies down there. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But my favorite manufacturer of sweets and confectionaries from Mexico is the company called BIMBO. I'm not kidding. It's an actual company, but I cannot say it on stream because apparently it's a bad word. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Right. And up next, we have a super chat from Andrew Lardner, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "What is the chance that Soledar draws Russian attention while Ukraine prepares to attack a better location like the Kherson feint?"
Can you reread that one again real quick for me, real quick?
What is the chance that Soledar draws Russian attention while Ukraine prepares an attack to better location like the Kherson feint?
I believe it's actually quite high. The Russians have been distracting themselves a lot with Soledar, and it's only a matter of time until a counteroffensive begins. The Ukrainians do them quite well and quite quickly over a short amount of time, and so it will happen and end as quickly as it started. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from Jesus UCSB, who it looks like put in the same thing before. So thank you once again for the support, and hopefully we addressed that earlier question pretty well. But thank you once again. And moving right along, we have a $5 super chat once more from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who says, "Me again. The IJN flying boats are not, I repeat, not in Pearl Harbor. It was a failed attack. The flying boats crashed in the ocean, so it's not in Pearl Harbor." End the quote, repeat the line.
And I thank you for the support, Walter. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought they were in those locks, and then we were looking around them. But that is still actually pretty interesting to hear. And if I know the flying boats right, it should have been like an HK-64 flying boat, maybe. No, that's a hose. H4 6K. Wait, is that what it was? Okay, wait, hang on. Japanese flying boat. I know I'm getting the numbers and like the letters correct, but where the world is it? It's not that one. That one's the modern one. This one was one of the World War II era ones. This is not the one I'm talking about though. This is an H8K2, and I'm talking about like an H6K2. Where the hell is it? Where is it? The Blomen Voss. The Boeing Clipper, yeah, the Coronado, neat. The Mariner, yep. The Sunderland, yep, cool, yep. Yeah, thanks, yeah. We didn't find it, but this is kind of close. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, Walter, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat once more from Jesus UCSB, who put in the same thing again. But thank you once again, and we appreciate the support very much. Up next, we have a $5 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, "Lyrebird, Australian bird, which imitates sounds to attract a mate, even a camera shutter and evacuate alarm."
Interesting.
And I guess that's what you're calling me. You're calling me that because I do a million voices.
Well, let me tell you something, Missy. I'm not impressed whatsoever with what you just told me, because no one can do voices better than me. The lyrebird might be out there doing its own voices, but nobody can sit here and do such a wide variety of interesting voices that depict
So many different people across this great nation. It is something else.
Actually, David Attenborough isn't even from America, so I don't know why I said great nation. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support and providing that information to us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $4 super chat from Anthony Bestwick, who says, "Can you look at the United 24 Media YouTube channel? And I'm British by birth, but Welsh by act of God."
Thank you for the support. And it is sadly a disability. It's a mental disability to be Welsh. That's why Matthew and me could do this every day without really ever stopping. But yeah, thank you for being a part of the Welsh team. Also, I thank you so much once again for the support, and I would check it out, but we're really running short for time here. So with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Dubsy Dabster for putting in a $2 donation, Dumper Bob for putting in a $2, and Tina Joe for putting in a $4 donation. Thank you to all three of you very much for the support, and we do appreciate it very much. And y'all three round out our super chat segment. So with that being said, we're moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. Cife, Rumpelstiltskin, Shife, once again, Mark Hodges and JP's RCs. They say Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, Morse code. Want a popsicle? Just let a Russian stand in the cold a little. Beat. Slava LSA and Slava Ukraine. I really had a hard time with that.
And thank you so much for deciphering that. Oh, did get it correct. And if you want a popsicle, just allow Russian to sit in the cold. Have you ever had a Russian popsicle? It's not freaking good. There's a little guy inside every single one. He acts as a popsicle stick. But anyways, I don't know how the hell I just came up with that on the spot, man. Like, I was just thinking that whole entire lyric actually just worked.
It did.
Anyways, thank you for deciphering that, everyone, once again. And we are on to the next one. Now, beyond this, we're going to answer 3 questions from the live chat, and we're going to round this out, because I got to get up early in the morning tomorrow to go to college again. So with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and let's see here. Let's go ahead and get rid of this bot right here. The PsyOps warned me about earlier, and I just saw it, so now I got it. Nasty little bot there. What a nasty one. But anyways, up next, we have a question from Chris Carl, who says, how to interpret that Russia again is replacing the commander in charge of the Ukraine invasion?
Interpret that as more failures on the idea of what the Russians were planning to achieve during his time as the general, and he failed to achieve them, so he got removed and he got replaced. So with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one. I had to make sure I actually answered it. I was like, that's so quick. It doesn't feel like an answer, but it was. It was a complete answer.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Wada, who says, have you seen the Russian killing 2 surrendering UAF servicemen?
Yes, I have. They actually, it's just kind of tough to go over because it was actually a pretty sad video. To explain the story to you, Matthew, some Ukrainian guys were inside of a foxhole. There was 2 of them together. A Russian ran up on them, and he realized they were Ukrainians, but apparently he didn't have a clear armband on for them to realize he was a Russian. So when he hopped down there, he started yelling at them in Russian to surrender, and he hit one of them on the head with the butt of his gun. And the Ukrainians were completely confused because he didn't have an armband, so they thought he was one of them. So they were sitting there like, what the hell are you talking about? You're one of us. Calm down. Like, you know, you're going insane or something. You must be having like a fit. And so the Russian says, no, I'm not. And he tries to grab one of the guy's guns, just like grabs it from him. And then the Ukrainian guy's like, dude, no, don't take it from me. And then the guy who got the like hit on his head with the buttstock, he was bleeding at that point. Like it had busted his forehead open a little bit, you know, and he was bleeding. So he started looking at the guy, and then he said, hey, he's a Russian. And then the Russian just shot both of them and then hopped out of the foxhole. So yes, I have seen that. And it was an unfortunate instance. There's no way to really say that, you know, the Ukrainians had the upper hand in that or anything. At that point, those 2 poor guys were just caught in an unfortunate instance. The guy didn't identify himself. He didn't have an armband on. The Ukrainians were being really lenient, which usually ends up getting people killed, sadly. But you got to give them a little bit of credit for being compassionate enough to think that it was just one of their comrades that had lost his mind or something, to try and sit there and talk him out and be like, hey, calm down. What the hell are you doing? But sadly, they got God. They paid the price for mistaking the Russian for a Ukrainian, and they got shot. If anything, if that should be a learning lesson, if Ukrainian soldiers can no longer identify someone on the spot as someone they know and they're acting erratic, shoot them on sight, because it's probably a Russian that is wearing a very similar uniform to yours and isn't identifying themselves with any kind of armbands. So yes, I did see it, and I hope that is a decent response to the question. And so with that, we are on to the last question of the night. So who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Alex Wolf, who says, has Russia used an FOAB? A FOAB.
The father of all bombs. They have not. From what we can tell, they're still keeping all their father of all bombs inside of Russia, and we haven't seen any of them get used on Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. I thank you so much once again for asking, Prego, and that's actually a pretty good one, and we've never had that asked before, and the answer is fortunately, no. And so with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and also comment once this becomes a video, because that actually helps a lot in the algorithms if y'all comment on this thing, not just in the live chat here on stream, but once it becomes a video. So make sure to comment. And also, Thank you all so much once again for watching. I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine and a brand new day on day 324. And with that, have a great night, take care, good luck, and I'll see you all then. And of course, long live the LSA, and Slava Ukraini!
Slava Ukraine.
Yes. The Lviv Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.